Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 66 of the Former Action Guys podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Kramer. This week I have on retired Marine gunner Mike Carr. He's a 0311 that worked his way up into the ranks and then eventually became a Marine gunner. He was involved with Stapleton when he was at the Infantry Battalion, went to Scout Sniper School and, did some work with those guys. Went to the Advanced Scout Sniper School. He was with Fast Company. He did a lot of different things, and like I said, he made it all the way up to gunner. So the conversations we have are pretty interesting. He came in during the 80s, so we talk about life in the infantry during the early 80s, about a rescue mission that they were prepping to go on while they were on the MEU in like 89, and then about some of the stuff he did in Iraq and stuff like that in the early 90s. And then I had to kind of cut the conversation off because we were over 2 hours, but we're going to come back and revisit some of his other stories. But this is a good start, gives a good background, and he talks about sniper school. He talks about what it's like to be a gunner, for those of you that aren't aware, because it's like a MOS or job where you hear about gunners, but you never really meet one. And so, had him on to talk about that stuff. Really interesting conversation. I think people are going to enjoy it. If you are enjoying it, make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, or give that thumbs up. It's just easy click. Give us a thumbs up, and it helps out the show. Thank you to everybody that's been giving us reviews on Apple Podcasts. We're now up to 75 straight 5-star reviews. Thanks for leaving those. Even if it's not a written review, it helps. If it's a written review, it's even better. So make sure to leave those, and I'll read them out on the air. Whatever platform you're on, make sure to subscribe and help out the show. Make sure to check out my Instagram, at Former Action Guys and at J Kramer Graphics. Both of those pages, and my website is jkramergraphics.com. And that's about it. Enjoy the show. Have a good day. Cool, man. So thanks for coming on the podcast, the Former Action Guys podcast. Here we are. You hit me up about you were listening to Dave James's podcast, his first one. He's been on twice now because he got cut off on that first one, talking about reconnaissance and stuff like that. And we started like a kind of a Facebook conversation and everything like that. And that's where you told me you had retired from the Marine Corps as a Marine gunner, which is cool. Which is a weird job because a lot of people don't know anything about the gunners. Like, you may see a gunner running around the battalion, or you may see them on the range. But I think for your E1 through E4s, they're kind of like, oh, that's the gunner, but they don't really know exactly who you are, what you do, and kind of maybe the training or background you have, or maybe not to the point that they should, I guess, or to the level of knowledge about your job as they should. But so I'm really interested to talk about that and everything, but I'd like to start with why you decided to join the Marine Corps and why you joined the infantry in particular. And what year was that?
Thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here. I joined in 1988.
Okay.
And the reason, I think I always wanted to be in the military from a young kid, and as I got closer, it was kind of split between the Navy and the Marine Corps. I was debating whether I wanted to be a SEAL or go in the Marine Corps. And while I was an instructor for Sea Cadet boot camp.
Okay.
You know what the Sea Cadets are?
Is it kind of like the Young Marines?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. I was in Norfolk, Virginia with those guys doing a boot camp, and we had a day. So let me back up. So the drill instructors we had were 2 Marine sergeants from Camp Elmore. They came over, so I worked with them daily. And then one of the days we went over, we did the Navy SEAL obstacle course at Little Creek, and we did some other stuff. And we went into the SEAL Team 2 quarterdeck, and I think I was 16 or whatever, talking to the SEALs there. They were like, kid, get the F out of here. We don't care about you. So that kind of shaped my experience of, do I want to be like these, professional but personable Marine sergeants that I had, or that that one guy that he probably was having a bad day or whatever, didn't have to deal with any kid coming in or whatever. So really that's what shaped it. And then I think there was no doubt that I just wanted to be infantry. I wanted to get out. I was tired of being in school, didn't want to do academics. I didn't want to do college or any of that. Sitting in the classroom, looking out the window, like, man, I'd rather be outside than inside right now.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think the infantry and like combat arms in general has a certain draw to young men, obviously, because that's just they're going through that phase in life where that just, I don't know, it's something for me. for me, joining the Marine Corps, like there was no other job other than to do like a combat arms job, right? And then when I came in, I don't know how much of the podcast, I know you've listened to some, but I don't know how much you've listened to, but when I came in open contract, ended up becoming a mechanic for 3 years, right? So I was the complete opposite world of where I wanted to be. And it just killed me inside knowing that I was in the Marine Corps, but I was like some fobbit dude who's never going to leave the base. You know, like I'm in Iraq, but I'm never going to leave the base because I'm sitting here turning wrenches. And, you know, there's a draw to those combat arms jobs because it's like, why am I, for some people like me, it was like, why am I in the military if I'm not here to, you know, do what we're here to do? You know, we're here to fight, you know, we're here to protect national security, obviously. And that has many different like ways of being done. Whereas, like, you know, an example like sending our medical ships to New York City or Los Angeles during a medical outbreak, that's protecting national security, you know, and that's not a combat job. But it's also very important. But, you know, to actually get into combat, I think a lot of guys, especially guys that join the Marine Corps specifically, think that's, you know, that's the path that that joining the Marine Corps is going to lead them down to. And it takes a certain... It takes a certain type of person to even join the Marine Corps. I think a lot of times it's either someone with a chip on their shoulder that's trying to prove to other people, you know, that they can do it, or it's, you know, the other person who's like your more type A, I guess you want to say it, type mentality where, you know, they're told their whole lives that the Marine Corps is the best. You know, you see it in pop culture and everything like that, how the Marine Corps is the hardest and stuff like that. And they just want to, you know, hey, can I live up to that standard that people have done for, you know, over 200 years now. So I think that's cool that, you know, that draw for you to go into the infantry and that, like, that's all you wanted to do. When you signed up, did you realize there were like multiple jobs, you know, infantry jobs, or were you just like, oh, I'm going to join the infantry? And then you're like, oh shit, there's like machine gunners and riflemen and.
So I did, but so my contract was, I think it was a BH contract, was with just infantry. And then when you get to SOI, is where they actually gave you the specific MOS. Yeah. Which was a kind of funny story. So I get to SOI. I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping forward, but I get to SOI and they're called combat instructors now, but the corporal was sitting there, looked at my SRB, and he's like, "Go to the far right line." I go to the far right line, wait there. I get to the front, and they're like, which was the 0352 MOS. He's like, "Oh yeah, I had a high GT score. So like, we want you over here." I get to the front of the line, like, "Where's your driver's license?" "Yeah, I don't have one of those." Like, shit. Go to the far left line. I went to the far left line, which was 0311, and that's kind of how that came.
So 0311 is where you settled in at, huh? Okay.
It was, yeah.
Another thing, too, I think is interesting. You joining in the 80s, you are in that generation where Vietnam veterans are having children and having like a huge influence on people that are joining the military because they're talking about their time in Vietnam, or maybe not talking about it and just giving you... Yeah. What was it like? What was it like with that kind of mentorship? You know, they're no longer like, they're like, those are what Vietnam vets would have been in their 30s and 40s at that point. So they're still relatively young people talking about their experiences. Did that kind of push you away at all, or do you think that kind of pulled you in to like you want to join even more?
So I didn't really have any contact with any Marines other than my recruiter. My dad was Army in the mid 50s and had a rough time. He was on an island in the South Pacific. They had to check a radio antenna like once a day, and then go hanging out at the beach with the ladies. Yeah. And my uncle, his brother was a few years older. He was in Korea as a combat engineer. But other than that, I didn't really have any contact with Vietnam vets or any of that stuff until I got in. Okay. And my company Gunny was when I first got to 2-8. Was a Vietnam vet. I got some funny stories about him, but so I didn't.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So other than that, I don't have any. I didn't have a neighbor that was like kind of led me down the path or whatever. I
talked to Dave James about that too, and because he runs a mentorship program, and I told him I was like, I think that's a really good idea because there's a lot of people that just don't know anything about the military, or people that join under the false pretenses that I don't know, or what they're in their own mind they're not understanding, or they can't fathom some of the things that you do in the military. Where like, hey, I can't go home because so-and-so said I have to stay here until whatever's done. So, I can't argue against it. You can't call in sick, shit like that, that regular people can't, like civilians can't understand. There's no sick days. There's no calling in sick. There's nothing like that. So it's a weird thing. So yeah, that's good that people that are out there doing that mentorship program, and it probably would have helped, someone like you also, like maybe sharpen your decision better, or maybe not go down any wrong paths, but not saying that you did or anything. But so you went through boot camp, you went through SOI and stuff like that. What was your first unit?
2-8.
2-8. What'd you think about that checking in there? Like, your new infantry guy coming to the fleet, like scared out of your mind probably.
So we, like, our whole class minus a handful of guys went to 2-8.
Mm-hmm.
So we got like cattle cart across the river because they were at Main side now. And we checked in. They have a gymnasium in the 8th Marines area. We checked in there, got in lines, and we tried to all get in the same company until one guy stepped in front and threw everybody else behind that off. So we were all trying to get to hotel company, or our golf company, and then one guy got behind, and everybody else ended up going to hotel company.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, until the Gulf War kicked up, there was 4 letter companies in an infantry battalion, not 3.
Oh, okay.
Like now there's like 1-8, like 1-8 they have like Alpha Bravo Charlie. Before they used to have Delta. So like when I was in 2, we had Echo Fox Golf, and we also had hotel company, plus weapons company, plus H&S company.
Wow.
But getting out of the cattle cars and then walking from the gym to our barracks, everybody's on the catwalk screaming, "Boots, we're gonna kill you!"
It's like coming to prison for your first time, right? It's a fresh fish. Here we are.
Yeah.
Oh man, that sucks being the new guy. I tell you what. That's another thing people can't understand, being the new guy in a military unit, especially a combat arms unit like that. I can't imagine what it was like to be in an infantry platoon as a PFC. And it's something you deal with until you get a couple more new guys in, or you become not the asshole of the new guy group.
It wasn't so bad. I ended up getting put in a room with 2 corpsmen.
Oh, okay.
So when I got to the room, and apparently they had just, like that day or the day before, for whatever reason, they flip-flopped sides of the barracks. So hotel company switched to the other side and golf switched. So everybody, when I got in the room, their stuff was all over the place. Nobody had a rack made or nothing. So I was like, all right, this is the rack I want. Threw my stuff on there, took the wall locker, set my stuff all up.
Nice.
And then they came in the next day like, who is this dude in our room?
Oh, yeah. I remember when I first got to the fleet, it was me and two guys I went to school with, checked into 2nd Maintenance Battalion, and they put us in a room. They put me and my buddy in to a room with a guy that was like a shitbag, if you will, and something had been going on in the barracks for a while where people weren't cleaning, or there was like 1 or 2 guys that weren't doing morning cleanup. So they were doing the whole, hey, stand outside your room at 05:30, full camis, ready for your room to be inspected, for morning cleanup to be inspected. Yeah. And this is my first morning in the fleet, right? And they tell us this the night before, like, hey, this is what's going to happen tomorrow. And we're like, God damn it. And we can hear them knocking on the doors down the way. They're starting to wake the people up and everything. And our roommate, this Lance Corporal, the senior Lance Corporal, is like, don't fucking answer the door. He's like, don't say anything. Like, the lights are off and everything. He's like, just pretend like you don't hear them. I'm like, bro, they are pounding on the door, and I'm not going to, on day 1, start ignoring what people are saying. So, yeah, it can really shape your time. He ended up being an all right guy and ended up doing me a favor later on, like hooking me up. But your roommate can really make or break your time, in the Marine Corps. And I was lucky enough. I was married, so I was only in the barracks for a couple months, and then I was gone. So I didn't have the same experience as some people, but I feel bad for guys that go to the barracks and get a shitty roommate. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and there's sometimes as a NCO or staff NCO, there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, because this one guy, someone has to live with him, and it's just, it is what it is. But, so since you didn't really know anything about the military, what was your...
Well, I mean, so I was going to say something earlier. So I went to Coast Guard boot camp as a Sea Cadet at 14, and then at 16, I went to, it was 86, so it was 16 and 86, when they were doing the rededication of the Statue of Liberty. So I represented my area up there. I was on a Navy ship for a week. What was it, ARS? I can't remember the name. It was a auxiliary rescue salvage ship.
Oh, okay.
So we spent the night. So the first morning I woke up, they sound Reveille, and I'm like, bam! It hit my head because it was in Iraq, and I wasn't used to used to that. And,
dude,
but so I had some experience, and so I was going from 14 to when I went to boot camp. I was going away doing stuff with the Sea Cadets every summer.
That's cool.
So I I had an idea, but just wasn't like a neighbor that was teaching me about.
Yeah. Well, what was your like thoughts then once you got to the fleet and you're like, oh, this is it. This is the Marine Corps. Like you're in training and you're doing it. Like, was it what you had hoped for? Like what you expected?
I was actually talking to my one buddy Chris last night, kind of about it, because he went a year before me. He ended up going to 1-7, and they did like Okinawa and some other stuff. Whereas when I got to 2-8, 8th Marines were the only ones doing the MEUs on the East Coast. So I got to do the MUSOC workup. I got, we were in the Helo company, so we got to do fast roping and rappelling and all the other, other kind of cool stuff that people like. And he's like, we went home to back home for like Christmas, and one of our other buddies was like, an Army guy, and he's like, oh, I went to air assault school. We heard about this one high speed thing called FAST roping. We're like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. He's like, what?
Yeah.
We weren't even allowed to do it at air assold school. We're like, ugh.
Oh, really?
So yeah, we got to do a variety of stuff that the regular if you're straight leg guy, if you would think guy going to Okinawa or something else, didn't get to do.
Yeah.
So I got spend a lot of time on ship.
It's weird how that's can be good. I mean, depending on your thought on that could be good or bad. Everyone that listens to this podcast on the regular knows my thoughts about being on a MEU, but that right there kind of talks about the differences. Like everybody's experience is different, and it doesn't matter what job you go into. Like you could have the coolest career with one cool deployment right after another. Or you could be a dude that doesn't catch a deployment at all, doesn't get to do really any cool training. You kind of marked time and you got out of it. Part of that is people don't take enough of their own, like they don't take control of their own destiny, and volunteer for stuff. Part of that is, some of that is on people on their self, but some of it is just pure fucking luck. I knew a guy, I was at maintenance battalion, obviously, and I was waiting. I didn't think I was going to get to deploy. I didn't think I was going to make it to Iraq before the war was over. And I remember a kid I knew before me who got picked for deployment, did his whole workup, did everything, and did pre-deployment leave, comes back, and they're like, hey, man, you got cut from the deployment. You're not going. This is like 07, maybe 08. So it's hot and heavy going in Iraq. That's when people were going into and out of Iraq. That dude did 4 years and ended up not deploying. That was the one opportunity he had to get to deploy, and they cut him because they had overstaffed the deployment. And like a couple days before they bounced, they cut, a group of guys, and he was one of them. And it's just like, it sucks, man. It sucks for the guys that did 4 years or however long they did in the military and didn't get to do like a lot of the cool stuff. I mean, everyone gets to do, you do a lot of cool stuff in boot camp. I mean, it's dumb and like as dumb as boot camp is, as much as you hate being there, rappelling, you're doing gas mask training, which is cool the first time you do it, but after that, it just becomes an annoyance, all that stuff. So everybody gets to do some cool stuff, but like you're talking about fast roping, like the first time I got to do spy rigging, I'm like, dude, there's so many people that would be jealous if they saw, like, I'm getting to dangle 500 feet underneath a helicopter, And, man. So what, after your, like, when you were going on the MEU, well, you want to kind of explain what the MUSOC, kind of format was, because we kind of went away from that. It's no longer called MUSOC or anything like that anymore. So you want to explain what that means?
Yeah. So a MEU is Marine Expeditionary Unit, and then the SOC is Special Operations Capable. And what made, so a MEU is as we call it, a Marine Air Ground Task Force. We have an air element, a ground element, a logistics element, and then a headquarters element. All kind of come together, and we work as one team. We train together for 6 months. Each different group has their own certifications, and then you do at the end of it a SOCEX, a Special Operations Capable exercise, where they evaluate the rapid response planning process, where you get a mission, you have to be ready to start executing that mission in 6 hours. The MEU goes through all kinds of different training. That's what the workup helps you do, is develop those SOPs. So the mission comes down, it says, hey, we're going to launch the Sparrowhawk platoon as an example. We're going light, medium, or heavy. They check that. Then everybody knows, okay, if it's the light, this is the light group, this is the medium group, and this is the heavy group. So it's all kind of set up along those lines. What made a MEU Special Operations Capable was the Maritime Special Purpose Force, which is the direct action unit was Force Recon. Then they had a reconnaissance element, was either the snipers or the recon platoon. And then they had a rifle platoon that was the covering force. So kind of think of like Black Hawk Down, the Delta guys was the force, were the shooters. The Force Recon guys were the shooters. The Rangers were like the rifle platoon, and then they had either snipers or the recon platoon doing the reconnaissance for that element. And then we would go through a couple years later on a MU when I was with 3-6. I was in the RNS platoon. I think we talked about that whereas we're talking back and forth, where we were the RNS for that element. Where we did advanced reconnaissance for those force guys. We would go in, we would, confirm or deny whether something was on site. We'd all, the guys that were qualified and certified as urban snipers to take shots, because we did part of our training out in downtown, wherever. Mm-hmm. And then there were certain missions that they were all required to have the capability to do: direct actions, strategic reconnaissance. I can't remember all the other ones. There was like 5 or 6 of them that made up the SOC certification. But that group was what made the MU special operations capable. Yeah. And then all the other missions were the standard MU missions of a raid, humanitarian assistance, FARP sites, and there's a wide variety of all those. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to my MU in 07. So I ended up doing 4 MUs, 2 in a rifle company, 1 in a sniper platoon, and 1 as the battalion gunner. So the one as the battalion gunner, that was the first MU that what do they call them now? Raider battalion, or Raider regiment, or Raider team, or whatever goes out on that. So we were 2-6 MU MARSOC capable is what it was. Okay. And then when they left,
what year was this?
That was 07.
Okay, 07.
Yeah, so that ended up being Fox Company guys. There was a whole big stink where they were kicked out of Afghanistan because of it. And then later on got cleared of all.
They've finally been vindicated after since 2007, like just last year, right? It was just last year where they finally came out and said that those guys didn't do anything wrong. For those that don't know, they were the first MARSOC team into Afghanistan. And they were working under SOCOM, under the SOCOM command, because they're MARSOC. And they got engaged I think they were on their way back from a mission or on their way out onto a mission.
It was like a daytime reconnaissance. It was like their first mission. And they got hit. They returned fire.
They tried to set up an ambush. They returned fire. And when you read the reports now, it says basically it was like surgical shooting by the MARSOC guys. Like they took out bad guys left and right. Like they smoked a bunch of dudes, but they were all bad guys. Like the investigation came out and showed. But at the time, MARSOC wasn't very popular. It was new. The Marine Corps didn't even really want it. The Army definitely didn't really want us around. And so they turned it into look, see, these Marines can't, be special operators. And so I know exactly what you're talking about and everything like that. For those that don't know what we're talking about, I would highly, recommend you read into it, because that was a way that the government really shafted a bunch of really good dudes and kind of ruined a bunch of guys' careers. I think the CO, they actually just now let him come back into the Marine Corps or something like that.
Yeah, I know he was trying, so he could get his 20. He was close to 20 to retire, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Fred Galvin.
Yeah. So, man, that would have been an interesting thing to been around. So you were the gunner when all that happened and all.
Well, I was the battalion gunner
for the BLT,
not for SOCOM, for the BLT. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was 2-2's battalion gunner.
Okay. So you talked about you were with State Platoon. Was this not until you got to 3-6, or were you working with them at 8th Marines as well?
So I did 2 I did 2 deployments in a rifle platoon. In '89, that was when we were going to go in and get Colonel Higgins, who was off the coast of Lebanon. I was in the Sparrowhawk platoon, and I was talking about linking up with the Force. We linked up with the Force platoon, trained with those guys for a couple weeks, and I'm going to combat lifesaver on ship. That was way back then. There was you're going to this high speed medical training in case you take casualties on there. I mean, back in the late '80s, that was some stuff. And then as you're walking around ship, you had to carry your bag during the course, and hey, so and so's down, and he's displaying this, and this, and you had to jump into action, whether you're at the chow hall or wherever else you were. That was
they don't do it like that anymore. Not that I've seen.
Definitely not.
That's cool though. I mean, you say we laugh at it because there's obviously way higher. I did TCCC and the live tissue training and stuff, and there's stuff like that. But the live tissue or the combat lifesaver training, the average person, you would pay a lot of money to go to a course to learn the stuff that they teach you there, even though we see it as more of a more basic, watered down kind of medical course. Yeah. But anyway, I just want to put that in there.
Yeah, no. So we on that MEU, we were slated to go in. Even to the point we had ammo in our magazines on our racks.
So
and our rifles were locked in the rifle racks that were right there as well.
Do you want to explain who Colonel Higgins is and kind of that whole thing? Because I
Sure.
I had heard the name before. Like when you sent me that message, like we were on the MEU during this, I was like, oh, that name sounds familiar, but I had to go back and look it up. But if you want to,
So and it's been a while, so my memory might be off a little bit, but he was a Marine that was working for the UN that got captured by some Lebanese or whatever terrorist organization, Hezbollah or whatever it was. I don't remember off the top of my head. And at one point, so we got tasked with the mission, and it was going to be the Force platoon as the shooters, my platoon as the since we're the Sparrowhawk, and they hadn't really established the MSPF as it was years later when I went through it. So our platoon, as the Sparrowhawk platoon, was used to working by ourselves. So we were a reinforced platoon getting sent to do whatever. So we got used to working by ourselves in that. And we were set to go rescue him. They figured a site out for him. And about a week before we ended up getting the call to go in, these blackbirds came in, these dudes with beards and some weird guns came in. You probably figure out who those guys were.
Yeah.
And the rest of the MEU was doing some other stuff as well. The boat company was practicing. They were going to do an over-the-horizon boat raid to secure a facility that housed Americans and then pull them out. And then once that was secured, once we had Colonel Higgins, the plan was to have the ships would come over the horizon, launch Amtracs at like 1,500 meters, splash ashore, load up all the Americans, drive them through the city and back out to our ships.
So this was like a two-pronged like rescue operation then?
So we're going to get Colonel Higgins, but we're going to pull all the other Americans out, so there was no repercussions on them because we went in there to get the.
Okay. So you're talking about just Americans that were there, not prisoners.
Yes,
also.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. So I looked it up. It says he was a colonel in the United States Marine Corps who was captured in 1988 while serving on a United Nations peacekeeping mission in Lebanon, and he was held hostage, tortured, and eventually murdered by his captors.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. That's
Because we ended up getting the call. I want to say it was a Sunday, and I can't remember what the code orders was over the 1MC. Now launched the whatever force. We grabbed our stuff, went up to the weight room, loaded up on our sticks, and that was the first time I saw snipers. I was like, because we had already done practice raids and other stuff on Cyprus, simulating where we were going and working together with the force guys, and like, who are those guys? They had big mountain packs, Israeli boots on, the sniper rifle that I'd never seen in person. I was like, they're like, those are the snipers. I was like, dude, I want to do that.
Yeah, that looks cool as fuck.
But and then as we sent guys up, birds were turning. I think one or two birds lifted off to get up in the holding pattern, and that's when they end up canceling the mission, pulling us back down. And either he got moved or was I think he got killed at like 90. So I think he got moved for whatever reason. His location got changed or whatever, and then that's what we ended up canceling that. From there, and then a few days later, we came out of Mod Lock, which is modified location, Gator Squares. We were in that for like 30 some days.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, it's weird the stuff that you can get involved with when you're on the MEU, right? Even if you don't like end up supporting like something like that, you're all spun up because you don't know at the time it's going to get canceled. So the adrenaline, like, oh shit, like we're about to go do a hostage rescue, like a legitimate, that's. It's pretty wild. We had some of those similar people fly in. Actually, it's known on our ship on the Macon Island after they did the raid in Yemen. It was in the news. After they did the raid in Yemen, one of the SEAL operators passed away on our ship. Or no, he passed away, and then they brought him back to our ship and everything like that. It was a whole thing, man. It's some of those raids is pretty wild, and the planning that goes into it is pretty wild, and it's cool. And you can, speak to this as well. As a junior guy, you're just sitting there eating commands. People are telling you what to do the whole time. And then at some point, you get up to the staff level and you're involved in the planning and you're seeing like, why are we doing certain things? And it really opens your eyes to it. And that's why I like to tell guys, if you don't like the job you're doing or you don't like what you're doing your first 4 years, like switch jobs or, maybe you're going to a different unit. Maybe you request a different unit. Maybe it'll be better. But your second 4 years is definitely different than your first 4 years because you're having an impact on like what's actually happening. Like you do get some say so and what's happening around you. And if you excel and you become a staff NCO in that 8 years, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's even in the realm of possibility for infantrymen nowadays. I don't know what it is now.
I think nowadays it was. I was a young guy. I picked up staff sergeant in 9 years, I think it was.
Yeah. Okay. And it's all in MOS dependent and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
You can have some serious say with like what your platoon or what, like what is happening that's going to involve your guys, and you can have like a direct impact on their well-being, their ability to do their mission and stuff like that. So, but
yeah, because on that deployment, we had just left Israel, which was we were in there for Libo.
Mm-hmm.
Are you there?
Oh, hold on just a second. I think my camera the battery died. Hold on. Yeah, I guess the plug came undone for my camera. So anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. That's all right. So we were leaving Israel, and we're heading west, and that's when we kind of got the mission. They're like, "Oh, turn around. We're heading back off the coast of Lebanon." And as we were going, I can't remember what happened. I think my team leader got in trouble, and then I became the team leader. So like, yes, this is cool.
Yeah.
I don't have to stand fire watch now. And that's what I was thinking of at the time. And then this pops up, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, here we go.
Here I am, 19 years old. We're going to be going to Lebanon, and I'm the team leader now.
Mm-hmm. That's for real. Yeah, this is for real.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a different thing, man. What kind of stuff did you guys do to prepare for that? Like, did they give you country-specific or threat-specific, like, briefings and kind of prep you? Or were you just kind of going off your SOP-style training that you did during your MU workup?
Well, we had our SOP style training, but then we did we worked together hand in hand with the Force Platoon. They flew the Force Platoon from, I think it was the Shreveport, over to our ship, which was the Nassau. So we would all be together as a package and fly off of there.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked together on our ship. We did a handful of practice raids on the island of Cyprus, simulating where we're going, getting out, securing. Our job was to secure the perimeter and the outside, and then those guys would make entry and do the room clearing.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, and other than the combat lifesaver stuff, that was about
it. Huh? Yeah. Did you guys do any kind of like shooting or anything just to bust a rust, like, set your sights or anything like that? I know you guys were on iron sights back then, but
yeah. To be honest, I don't remember shooting. We might have. I just don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't stick out in my mind as something that we ended up doing.
That's pretty interesting, though. Again, like I said, I hadn't heard of Colonel Higgins until I'd heard the name, but I couldn't place it until I looked it up. But that's one of those things, man. Marine Corps history, I guess those things you kind of.
Yeah.
There's just so many historical things that have happened, along the Marine Corps history that something like that gets forgotten about, or not really forgotten about, but kind of push aside a little bit for other stuff. But really interesting. So you saw the snipers and you wanted to get involved in that. What was the process like in 1990 for getting into state platoon or going to sniper school?
So for me, I ended up staying in. So on that 89 deployment, I took the Force Recon Indoc.
Okay.
Passed it from my understanding. We get back. There was like 4 of us that passed. We did that in Rota, Spain. We get back. We go on Christmas leave or whatever it was. I think it was Christmas leave. Came back, and the other 3 dudes were gone, and I was still there. And I was like, well, maybe I was number 4, and they only had 3 slots.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stayed with that. I stayed with my rifle platoon for that next deployment, which we ended up going into northern Iraq with. But come to find out, it was my platoon commander, platoon sergeant knew I was going on the next MU, and they're like, oh, this dude's the guy we want to have leading the squad. And in the end, I just led a fire team. But
yeah. So were you went into northern Iraq for the Gulf War then?
So it was after the Gulf War. It's called Operation Provide Comfort.
Okay.
Where the Kurds were getting decimated up in the mountains of northern Iraq.
Yeah.
So we flew in and kind of set up the northern no-fly zone kind of deal.
Okay. So around like Sinjar and stuff like that, like Sinjar Mountain and that around that area where they. Yeah, whatever. Up there in northern Iraq. I know what you're talking about.
Mosul was a little bit south of where we were. We're like in Dahuk and I can't think of the other name.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
So you guys weren't there for any like direct engagements then. You were out there just as a standby kind of force?
No, so initially the MU was a standby force, and they pulled us out of our training, and I actually got injured on a training out, strained some ligaments in my left knee, got medevac, and my platoon and my company beat us back to the ship because they recalled everybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we get back to our ship, and the plan was just to let the helos come in and drop off humanitarian aid until the birds kept on getting rushed by Kurds and others. Like, okay, we need to bring the battalion in to provide security. And then it kind of expanded from there. Before it was, we want the Americans to do this. And once we came ashore, we went to Salopi, Turkey, came out of buses in the middle of this open field. We're like, what? Is this the right spot? And we just ended up setting up our shelter halves. 2 days later, we did a helo assault into northern Iraq to set up blocking positions to allow the rest of the battalion to come through in case there was mines. We were basically a speed bump, really. There was 2 roads going into, I want to say it's the Hook. And we had a platoon on either side of it, and sent them a blocking position at either one of those going into the village. And then my platoon, we pushed up to the top of this one hill, overwatching both. And we ended up hand carrying a section of 50 cals in from the heavy guns platoon, and that was a nightmare.
Yeah, that's you're the second person. Ketting, I had a guy named Ketting on. He's a recon Marine, but he was with I want to say he was with 8th Marines. God, I feel bad not remembering now, but he was with 8th Marines and man, it wouldn't have been 8th Marines. I don't know. He was in Marja for the assault in Marja, and he had 6 Marines. Yeah, but no, he was in the northern part of Marja, so it might have been 9th Marines. Anyway, either way, I feel like a jerk. I'll have to look it up here in a minute. But he was talking about a group of their dudes hand carried a 50 cal, and I'm like, dude, that's tough, man. I can't imagine going on like extended patrolling, because that's not you're not working out of a patrol base. You're on the move every day, like going through and carrying a 50 cal, a tripod, and.
Well, we ended up not. We helo assaulted in, and there was probably a stack. I don't know, a 5-foot stack, 2 or 3 foot wide by 5 or 6 feet long. A 50 cal ammo that we ended up spread loading between the company. We hand carried the 50 cals in. We had to also split up all the 600mm mortar ammo that was going in. But once we were in, and the battalion came through, their vehicles came up and met them. So we weren't like leapfrogging with them. We just did the initial helo assault uphill, and they came up the hill with us and set up in the overwatch so they could reach across to the one platoon that was on the far side of the valley.
So,
but that was miserable.
Oh, I bet, man. And I want to say it was with 3rd Marines. That's who it was. Yeah, 3rd Marines is who he was with. So when doing all this, going to Iraq, and it had to have been a different. It's hard for. Okay, I'm 36, so coming up, we didn't have the internet. Like, we had computers. We're playing Carmen San Diego on the computer, and like Oregon Trail and shit like that. And then middle schools, when it was like, hey, look, Netscape Navigator. Like, there's an encyclopedia online. It was like a internet. Like, this is cool. Yeah. And then in high school is when I really got introduced to, like, I guess, kind of what the internet is now, where it's just a bunch of different crazy websites, whatever. But in 1990, you're going to Iraq, or 1989, or whatever the time was, you're going to Iraq. Yeah. You can see it on a map, but what else did you know about it? Had you ever seen a photo? Did you, do you know what people over there wear? To kids nowadays, kids these days, people nowadays, they forget how little information we used to work off of back in the day. And I was a kid during that time frame. I was younger, so I say us. More so people like you who are adults that had jobs and doing stuff like that. What's it like? Because you were there for both. You experienced both. What was it like deploying somewhere prior to having the internet and the ability to like research a place, or being on a MEU, being able to look up hotels and get your hotel set for Singapore before you guys port, and stuff like that. Like, what's that like compared to now, where all the information's at your fingertips?
Well, it was definitely different. So everything was like snail mail. You didn't, the other thing was you didn't get hotel rooms. You weren't allowed to. Whenever we pulled into port, you had to have, it was a 3-section thing that was going on. We broke it up: 1st platoon, 2nd platoon, and 3rd platoon, and then the weapons attachments went to each of those platoons. And you got to keep 1/3 of your force on ship just in case. Case in point, we were in 89. We're in Lisbon, Portugal, and there was a riot. It made international incident. It was all over the news. CNN was reporting on it, and it ended up being something that was set up, but that was part of why we kept part of our force on ship. So we were getting riot gear, like we're gonna go take care of these guys. I mean, they beaten up the chaplain and they threw him in. I think there was a 100. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge thing. You can look it up. I think I might actually have an article on my phone that I could send you.
Yeah, do that, and I'll put it in the show notes so people can read about it.
Okay. And it was crazy. So we had guys from from the MEU running back to the ship, running up our gangplank because we were the closest one, showing an ID card. I'm with the MEU. Let me on. Because the police were, they had the police, the reserve police, and it was all staged and set up from what I learned years later, because of something another either U.S. or NATO forced group came in and did. The British said, "Screw you." They pulled their ship and they pulled out without a tugboat or nothing that night.
Oh,
they got
really?
all the people back. They're like, "We're out," and we ended up staying, a couple of days, not really getting any libo. But that was back then. You didn't let people go and leave. You were there as a contingency.
So when you had Liberty, there was no overnight Liberty. It was all every night was coming back to the ship, and that was for everybody on ship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, so the staff and sailors and officers might have had till later in the night, like 02 or first thing in the morning, but everybody had to be back by a certain time. There was no real, from what I remember, again, I was Lance Corporal on the first one and a corporal on the second one, so I'm pretty sure that everybody, they just had a little later. Like we might have had Lance Corporals and below had to be back at like midnight. Mm-hmm. Corporal and above could be back at like 02.
Yeah.
But everybody had to be back at the ship.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. People nowadays would freak out now if you told them they couldn't have overnight libo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, rightfully so in my opinion, because for me, I needed to get off the ship. Like it was just too much. I spent my second MEU. I was on it more than anyone from the S3 shop, except for maybe the OPSO, and that's because he's an eccentric, and they kind of forgot that I was even there. The ops chief was like, "Who hasn't got off ship yet?" And I'm like, I think everybody has but me, Master Guns. And he's like, "Oh shit, we're going to let you go ashore tomorrow to go to the PX in Djibouti." And I'm like, "Thanks, Master Guns, but you got to come back." It's like, all right. So yeah. So that's pretty wild though. And people, that happens a lot, these staged riots. I think people see these staged protests a lot out in like Okinawa and stuff like that too, and
so this wasn't necessarily a riot. It was, they were waiting for like one incident to happen with somebody in the U.S. or British. And once it was, they brought out all the riot police and everything else. So it wasn't really a riot. It was just one incident. I think it was kind of staged on their part. This tripped it off, and we just came out with all our forces and started, like I said, they arrested the chaplain and
that's crazy.
I think the Battalion XO and some others, and there was like 100 and some people that were arrested and taken to jail.
Let's be honest. I've known a couple chaplains that probably could get arrested also. They're not.
Yeah.
Man. So after that MEU and coming back, what was your plans? Like you obviously had re-enlisted at this point, right? Or was this?
No. So I did, in my first 4 years, I did 2 MEUs.
Okay. And so
one in 89 and then the one in 91.
When you were coming back from that second MEU, were you getting close to the end of your enlistment then?
I had about a little less, probably about 8 months left. And that's when I went home. And I was like, yep. Because I was planning on I was going to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's like, screw the Corps, I'm getting out. Went home and I was like, man, there's nothing here that really excites me.
Yeah. Where are you from originally?
Outside of Philadelphia.
Okay. I've never been up in that area. Yeah. I know what you're saying, man. I'm from Lafayette, Indiana, which is not a bad place. I don't mind it. It's next to Purdue University, Lafayette, West Lafayette, Indiana, all that area. You got a good mix of like farm kids, and you got a good mix of like, normal. I think the city is like 100 and something thousand people. Like it's not that huge, but it's not tiny. And me and my buddies that joined the military, and I think most people have the same kind of attitude. Is like you see your buddies from back in the day, and they're all doing the same thing. They're all like. Mm-hmm. It's hard to relate to a lot of people or talk to a lot of people. And I've talked about it here before. Like I've been to probably 15 countries or more. I've never sat down and counted it out, but probably at least 15 countries. And it's like, how can you even discuss some of those, some of that with people that have never even left, the country at all or their region, because some people never leave their hometown, maybe go on vacation once a year or something like that. Not even sometimes. But yeah, I get it, man. Like going back and seeing, and don't get me wrong, if any of my friends are listening to this from Lafayette, Indiana, like there's nothing wrong with Lafayette and there's nothing wrong with what people are doing there, with their lives. It's just some of us take different paths. And I think once you've broken that seal, you've gotten away from your hometown and experienced other things, you kind of just want to keep experiencing other and new things, rather than getting into I don't know, some kind of like marking time mindset where you're just kind of, working for the weekend kind of deal. So I get that, man. At the time, there's probably no kind of bonuses or anything like that for a Marine trying to re-enlist, right? Especially an infantryman.
I got a story for you. So when I came back, one of the guys on my previous MU in my platoon, he was a force recon guy in the reserves, came active duty because he was doing the PLC program and went to Northern Iraq with us on that MU. He had gone over to the sniper platoon. When I got back, he's like, dude, you need to come over to the platoon. We need bodies. And I was like, he's like, come take the indoc. So I was like, yeah, that sounds fun, Let me go take the indoc. Took the indoc. And in the end, I was their number one choice coming over to the platoon. So like, by then I had 2 deployments, been to Assault Climbers course, some other stuff. And I was like, this is something new. And got over there and we ended up going to Okinawa. And I was like, what's Okinawa like? We're going to get on ships. We're going to do like, some stuff. And like, it's like being at Lejeune, but in Okinawa. Oh, that's not like too exciting.
Yeah, that's the new thing that people are learning nowadays. The last couple of years have really picked up those Okinawa rotations, the UDPs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what was the indoc for? Can you remember what the indoc was like for the state platoon at the time?
Yeah. So talking to other guys that do other stuff in other platoons, I thought the way that they did theirs was really good. So we ended up doing. We had to take a written test on a Tuesday, like a Tuesday afternoon, like 100 question, just general 03XX infantry questions. And then we showed up Wednesday morning and did a PFT, followed by a 5-mile pack run with a 50-pound pack, dumped that and went immediately into a 00 course. And then that was the morning. And then we had to be back by noon. I think that ended at about 08. And by noon, we had to be back to do land nav. We did day land nav and then night land nav. And they gave us stuff that was at, intersections at a road on main side of Lejeune, all the way out to almost, boxes out almost to the front gate. And then when we came back for night land nav, they just switched cards. So it wasn't like, it's night land nav where you see some places, a smaller, shorter course or something. It was the same course. You just switched cards and went out. And then you got back when you got back. And then the next morning we got up, and by then there was only like 5 or 6 of us. I think it was 6 of us. And so usually they would break it out into 4-man teams, which is what the platoon was used to working in 4-man teams. But they're like, there's only 6 of us, so we're making one big team. And we did a patrol, and they were just evaluate and see how we were as an 03 in the woods.
Yeah.
Can we train this guy? We're not trying to make him a sniper right now, but what is his basic skill and how does he move in the woods, and what's his thought process? So we went out and we had to get eyes on, can't remember the end of the bridge, one of the bridges coming in over at like Alligator Creek as you're coming in the main side. So we get out there. You can say something?
No, I'm trying to think of the bridge you're thinking about or you're talking about.
Yeah, and I can't remember off the top of my head. You'd think I would know after I've been 24 years at Lejeune, and you'd think I'd know that place.
That's crazy.
But so we went in, and at this point, I was the patrol leader, so I had to write a patrol order and do all that, which was good to go. I went to combat squad leader school in Okinawa. Actually, that was later on. So I had written a half-ass order, and I was like, here we go. We went out, and at that point, in my mind, I was making all the decisions, or a lot of the decisions. They had a guy from the sniper platoon that patrolled along with us and kept in radio contact. And we got to the ORP, Objective Rally Point. We set in, and I was like, all right, I'm going to send the ATL and another guy and two on security to go with them. So they kind of would go, the 2 guys go onto the bridge, do the recon on it, would go straight up. They had 2 guys further back, and the idea was they would hold flank security in case they got hit. They'd rush through them, they'd close the door and pull back and link back up with us. They went out. they got eyes on the bridge, pulled back, and came in, and we called, and we're getting ready to leave, and the guy from the sniper platoon was with us. He's like, yeah, good to go, but he didn't go all the way to the bridge with them, with the two guys, and he's like, oh, they want us to hold on. We got to go back. You got to send two guys back because they didn't believe you were there.
Oh.
Like, okay, so they went up there. The two guys went back in again. They had apparently an awesome position because they got there and they took the radio with them. And they're like, yep, you're on the bridge. No, if you're looking in the wrong direction, still looking in the wrong direction. Miller just took a smoke from his cigarette, and he was like talking on the radio exactly like, what did they see? They knew they saw him, and then like, all right, you guys need to pull out now. We're gonna get you. And they pulled out, and they're like, they came back to us. We linked up, and we started moving back to main side. And they're like, hey, start moving out. And like, dude, we're already 500 meters away from the ORP.
Yeah.
What? Oh, and they didn't realize that they left because they had such a good position and movement.
That's nice.
And
that's what you hope for, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly right. So we ended up patrolling back to LZ Sparrow, and back then they had a aircraft Hulk. I think it was a 46 or something in there. That's what we walked to Sparrow, got in there. We're the helos now.
Oh, yeah.
We landed, and then we extract out of it, simulate, and then we got inserted. So we went back to those birds. It's like, all right, roger that. We made it back to the main side. Then they gave us a mission that night for recovering a pilot. Like, roger that. So we go, and the pilot's position was even further down than where we were during the day. So we pick up, move out, and we had to be there by 2300. I think we got there at like 2310.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like apparently like they didn't think we would make it there that quick, because the whole plan was the whole time was he wasn't going to be there.
Okay.
And then like, all right, he's moved over to here now because you missed your timeline. You guys suck. You guys are the worst. And picked up, and we moved off and crossed over the main road going to Lejeune, got to the other side of the train area, and we started bouncing. And then like, all right, at about 02, they're like, yeah, he picked up by some other special operations forces. You need to get ready to move out. We started heading back to main side, and they're like, all right, Carr, you're hit. And then the other five, I had to take my gear. Someone had to carry me. Someone had to carry my gear.
Yeah.
And then we go 100 meters like that, and then we ended up about 100 meters. They put me down. All right, we go a little bit further, and they went through with everybody being killed, and then they went to two guys in the patrol killed, and then they went to half the patrol killed, and they're trying to get under our skin, and we're like, yeah, there's nothing you can do to us now. It's sun's coming up here in a little bit. It's Friday morning. We're almost done, and they did realize like, yeah, at that point after they killed half the patrol and then killed the other half of the patrol, like, all right, we're done. Just start walking back to main side. And
you're all
that was
dead.
the end of it. Yep.
That's funny. So what was it like moving over into that kind of realm after being, an 0311 doing the regular infantryman, work compared to that?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, it was something different. Plus it was in the small teams. And my whole growing up, and then also, as a young Marine in the Marine Corps, I was always reading books about like force recon or snipers, just small teams, even though it was like lurk teams in the Army, and all that. So it was like right up my alley. I was like, man, this is exactly where I want to be. And, I love doing this.
That's cool, man. Yeah, there's a whole series of books on the LRPs, the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol guys. I read in 2009 when I was in Iraq. There's like 5 or 6, maybe more, that talks about basically their whole history in Vietnam and some of the crazy stuff they did. Yeah. So did you ever make it to sniper school, to the formal school?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So after that so we went over to Okinawa on that deployment, and I don't know how it worked, but they were able to get an extra team. So they had four four-man teams that had 2 snipers and then 2, either the scout or the RTO or security in the RTO in those teams. And then the team I was in had that guy Miller, who's the force recon guy. Another guy, Sarfo, he was a German paratrooper, Black Russian who spoke German and fluent Russian, fluent German and English.
Wow.
A guy named Kozak, who was an airborne ranger, jumped into Grenada with the Rangers.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you had this guy. I was like, I was the only guy that wasn't jumped. They all had gold wings and other stuff. And I was like, man, I'm the schlep of the group,
Yeah.
But they used us as like more of a recon team than anything. And they armed us differently as well. They had We had 3 203s and a saw in our team. Vices, 2 M40s, you know, two bolt guns and two rifles, which is what the other teams had.
Okay.
So for that deployment, that's what we did. While we were there, we ended up going to doing some cool stuff in Korea. But before that, we ended up doing our own in-house sniper school.
Okay.
Supposed to get us OJT, but it really, you know, I mean, it was a great learning experience again for me, because one of the first things we did was Battalion Tactics. Back then, the platoon commander was the S2, so you didn't have like a separate platoon commander. He dual had, you know, so that's why the snipers were in the H&S and the S2 shop, because the S2 officer was the platoon commander.
Yeah. Okay.
So he gave us classes on Battalion Tactics, like, okay, so your team is here, your 4-man team does this, and it affects the whole potential what the whole battalion's seeing or experiencing. They might, you know, so it was beat into my head, you know, as I understood it, you know, at a young early age, the radio was your primary weapon.
For sure.
You know, call back.
Yeah.
You know, and then even when I was over there in Okinawa, I had a Gunny Poole was the staff and COIC of the combat squad leader course. And did you ever see those last 100 yards books?
No, I don't think so.
So he made it up to, like, I'm going to say major lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, and then got reverted to be a gunny. Spent a bunch of time in Vietnam. It was a crazy story, but he was the chief guy, and his whole thing was deception of whatever. If you can hold off shooting your direct fire weapons, you can. I mean, even in squad leader school, we took the practice grenades, thumb clip, pull pin, took the spoon off, and then threw the grenade.
Yeah.
So you didn't hear the shing of the spoon flying off, because if you hear that, you know that's a grenade and that's somebody's here. But if I'm calling for fire and there's rounds hitting, and then you hear this, that might have been a short round or a dud round or something.
Yeah.
But they still know that you're there, calling in or whatever. So at a young early age, radio, I learned the radio was my biggest asset. And
yeah, I think that's a key thing that a lot of guys learn in that kind of field, or like mine, you know, as a forward observer, like that's your lifeline. And, you know, as a JFO, which I never was, I was just a JTAC and moved up to JTAC. You know, when you're in one of those roles, like that is your weapon, is that, you know, you can bring, as a JTAC especially, you can bring more destruction to a battlefield than anybody else that's walking around out there, because you have the ability to call in, you know, air, artillery, mortars, naval gunfire, or reinforcements from the battalion if necessary. Yeah. And it's kind of a humbling, you know, responsibility, you know, and I think some people don't like having that responsibility. It's a stressful thing for some people as well, because you find out that, like, real life decision, you know, there's real effects to the decisions that you make and how you call in stuff. If you give a wrong target location, if you're off by 200 meters, I mean, if people will try to dismiss that, you know, if you're out on a range and it's like, well, it's about 200 meters off. And I always try to tell guys, like, quit imagining this is a range and imagine it's like a town, you know, it's a village and that's the building you had to hit, but you're 200 meters off. You know, what building is 200 meters away? That's a big deal. You know, that's not just, it's not just I missed my intended target. You've directly affected the fight. You've directly affected the attitude of the civilians that are around, you know, that have to put up with the fighting. This isn't going to help sway your side. That's not winning hearts and minds. Yeah. It's a huge responsibility, and learning the radios is crazy. You know, like, you have to do it. It's one of those, you know, I never got tasked as a JTAC, you know, actually working with someone where I had an assigned radio operator that could load my radio, or, you know, refill it with crypto, or, you know, whatever, you know, program it like that. It all fell on me. I'm not a radio operator, but it's, you know, that's my weapon. So I have to know it as well as, like, a machine gunner knows a Mark 19 or a 240 or something like that. It's the same kind of thing. So, you know, and how you were talking about your platoon commander kind of broke down the battalion tactics. And so you can kind of see that. And that's something I try to do too, is, like, you know, by giving that example of, like, hey, this isn't, you know, don't imagine this is an impact area. Imagine it as a village. That's the kind of stuff you got to put in people's minds, because, you know, it's hard for someone that's never seen, you know, like, an actual call for fire in a real life situation and what can happen. You know, it's hard to explain that to them or have them perceive the realities of that without, you know, I don't know. You got to give them something. You got to give guys vivid, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but it's it's definitely something that you got to pass down. Like, hey man, this is why we're doing it. And I was never against my guys asking me why, like, why are we doing this? Well, my NCOs, when I was a staff NCO, I'd try to give them that information, because if you understand why you're doing it, then it makes it a little easier to do the job, rather than someone just going, no, you're going to fucking do it. Don't ask questions,
So our stuff was more jungle, because we're over in Okinawa and it was, the jungle's there. So it was like, okay, if you see this group going through, just let us know. Don't engage, because if you engage, that might change what they're going to do, come towards you. But we might have a rifle company that's, a click away, waiting on them to show up. And because you engaged and took one guy out, now it's changing what they're doing. And the chess game.
It's a chess game, exactly.
Where our guys,
yeah. No, for sure, man. That's exactly it. It's a chess game, and you got to understand that, you can do this. You're able to do this attack right now, but should you do it? The tactician, the good tactician understands when it's, time to attack and when it's time to wait, and why, and understand the difference between why you're doing one versus the other. So what other kind of specialized training? Well, actually, you're out there on the UDP, did you get to go to a bunch of different countries while you were on the UDP? And if you did you work?
No.
No?
We went to Korea. It was the only place we ended up going.
How'd you like Korea? I've heard a lot of people don't like it, but I've heard mixed.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I was a young guy. We stayed at Pohang. We were supposed to go over there to be an aggressor for, I think it was like 2-7 or somebody else, doing an assault landing with the Koreans. And a typhoon hit Okinawa, and that part of the exercise got canceled. So we ended up doing the cross training with the Koreans.
Did you work?
Which was kind of cool.
Did you work with their snipers and stuff?
No, we did it so they weren't really sure what to do with us, from what I remember. So they assigned us. We ended up getting in our vehicles, our 2 high backs, and driving north to different grids. They give us grid patrol to it and do field sketches of what we saw in a certain direction that they were asking for us to see. So we ended up doing that, and then we ended up. I can't remember the number, but we were like a couple people over the number that were. If we were under that number, we didn't have to have any Korean with us asking us what we're doing or staying with us the whole time. So every night we rotated like 3 or 4 guys back to Pohang, so that our platoon was under the minimum required to be out there by yourself and not have to have a Korean traveling around with you.
Yeah, that's funny.
So we spent the nights out in different places, and at one point we were in a position. And I want to say each guy had like a magazine of ammo, which was kind of like odd at this point. It was before that we didn't have any ammo. And we're sitting in the night we inserted, we got to up in the mountains, and there was like a grave site that we ended up staying in. There was like a couple graves. We were like, oh, this is clear. This is kind of cool. We'll stay here, and then we'll pick up and move along the finger to our ROP the next morning. Got up the next morning, set in. And it was me and Kozak on one side, Miller and Soffer on the other. We had like a little pull cord. And when there was a trail that was like 30 or 40 yards in front of us. And, we're sitting there, talking, been out in the field for, 5 or 6 days or whatever overall now. Like, just kind of talking in low tones. And then I think Kozak reached over and grabbed my leg, and I stopped talking. I looked up, looked at his face and saw his face, locked eyes with his and saw the fight out his eyes. And there was whether it was someone training or what, there was a Korean dude, coming down the trail with an AK-47.
Oh, really?
Followed by another one. And then I pulled the pull cord. Miller comes around. He's like, coming around kind of low. And he sees our demeanor and kind of like melts to the ground. Like, oh shit. We just sat there and watched 6 dudes with AKs patrol by us and continue on down the trail. We got a salute report done, called it in, and then I want to say 1 or 2 other teams saw it further down. And
they never told you who they were, though? They didn't say it was part of the exercise or not?
If they did, I don't remember. But I was like, what the?
Were you guys close to the DMZ?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because it took us like 2 or 3 hours to drive to our insert points.
Okay. From
Pohang. So it was a good ways away where our insert points were.
I've always wanted to go to Korea. I always thought it'd be cool to go visit like the DMZ specifically and see that whole like weird like North Korea, South Korea divide and kind of I don't know. It's just you got a hermit country like that with very little information about it coming out. It's always intriguing, right? Because you want to learn more about it. But Yeah, I've heard guys, like I said, I've heard guys say it's good and bad over there. They've had a good time. They've had bad times. Some guys, you got Army guys that are stationed there.
Yeah.
What do you notice about the kind of like rhetoric that comes out of Korea from then compared to today? Like is it similar, you think? Do you think it comes out more now, or it's never really changed that much? It doesn't seem like.
I think it's the same, but it's coming out more because there's more media
More ways to be touched by the
avenues.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things. It's just like an ongoing thing. People feel like it's every time you hear about Korea, you're like, all right, it's like, can we even really take any of this seriously anymore? Do we care?
Yeah.
Almost like the Russian planes getting close to our planes. It's like, are we still doing that? That happens like every week now. Yeah, we get it. A bomber flew too close to us in Alaska. Like maybe that's what they're trying to do is lull us into complacency, but it's just those weird tactics that you see over time. So was there any other like interesting training events or anything you want to talk about from that deployment?
No, I don't. No.
So when you said you went to, did you come back and go to did you go to the sniper school at Quantico or anything like that, or did you just do the battalion sniper school?
So when we get back, they're like, hey, Carr, you're too senior to go. We're getting ready to get slots to go. I'm like, Carr, you're too senior to go. And I was like, really? I spent, I gave this battalion, 3 deployments in like 4 years, and this is what I'm getting. And they're like, yep. And I'm like, all right, but you need to help us train the new guys. Like, yeah, okay. I think I'm going on recruiters as assistants.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys in a bit. I was at home on recruiters as assistants, and I got a call, and they're like, hey, Mike, do you want to go to sniper school? I was like, yeah. Like, hey, we got a slot for you. One of the new guys, shot marksman at the rifle range, can't go to school. And I was like, I'm on my way, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So 2 weeks in my recruiter's assistance, I ended up going, getting a call, and I came back and went to sniper school.
Which school did you go to?
Second Mardiv.
Okay. And do you want to kind of talk about what the requirements for that is and kind of, what year did you go?
I went in 93, like April 93.
Okay. And you want to talk about kind of the requirements to go to that school and then maybe some of the stuff that you guys covered in that course?
Yeah. So, back then it was the Scout Sniper course. Now it's the Scout Sniper Basic course where they don't, they go back and forth whether they want to teach mission planning in it. That's too hard for them. Take it out. I was like, you get to it, you get to platoon, and you'll get to school. You come back, you might be the senior guy as a corporal. You need to explain the tactics and other stuff to the company commander, and know it well enough. So that was something that we definitely did back then. That's gone back and forth. Here recently, I guess, on teaching that stuff. But so the requirement was you had to have like a first class PFT, so much left on your contract. I want to say at least a year on your contract left. You had to be a rifle expert, GT score of 110 or higher, and I think you had to be in a sniper billet or in a sniper platoon, to go to school. And it was broken up into 2 main phases, the shooting phase and then the stalking phase. Go out and you shoot, 300. The course of fire, and I think they've changed it here recently, but I know they have. So back then it was you shot 300, 500, 600, and you did 3 stationary and 2 movers. So the target would come up and you shoot the stationary target twice. You can get your wind down for that range, and then the target would pop. For the movers, the target would pop up on the left and move across at a slow pace to the right, and then pop down. And in that time, you had to engage it. And it wasn't like a small, like you think of the rifle range, that just the width of the one target ray. So like I was at target 15, so my target moved from 15 all the way to 20, and I had to engage it somewhere within there.
Okay.
And then the same thing, it'd come down, they'd mark where my shot was, pop it back up so I could see it, and then, kind of mark that, and then it would start moving across, going the other way. So we did that at the 300, the 500, and the 600. The 700, we would shoot 3 stationary and 2 bobbers. 2 stop and goes. So they would walk, stop for, 2 or 3 seconds, walk, stop, 2 or 3 seconds, and then continue on to the end. Both one with one direction, then back the other way. And then the 800 was 3 stationary and 2 bobbers. And all that was somewhere between 15 for me, like 15 and 20. a target would pop up. So I'd keep my crosshairs in the middle of like 17, and then if either I saw it or I would cover the left half and my partner would cover the right half. He's like, we would, come up with like right half of 18. I just slide my scope over, see it, hold, squeeze, engage, rack around, and then it would come down. It would be up for like 3 or 4 seconds and come down, mark it, and then it would pop up somewhere else within that thing. Have to identify it, move the scope over to engage, move the rifle over to see it, engage. And then the 900 and 1,000 was 5 rounds each, and you had to have 28 out of 35 hits.
Okay. How many guys did you lose, or did you lose anyone just from the shooting portion alone?
I don't remember how many we lost from the shooting portion. Our class was actually pretty good. We only lost 5. 5 or 6. I think we started out with 21 and graduated 15.
Okay.
Which was kind of unique back then. Usually it was like more of the class would go.
Yeah. You're so once you finish the shooting and stuff and you guys get into the stalking phase, and I think that's what everybody hears about, the shooting and stuff, and the people that really look into sniping and sniper school and stuff like that know that the stalking phase is what is really difficult for a lot of people. What kind of skills did you pick up during the stalking phase that you kind of carry with you now, even today, or in sniper school in general?
You're always under observation.
Yeah.
I've gotten caught, a couple times, doing whatever, like, in my head, I see an instructor, like when I was going through the RNS course, way away from the objective. It was for the SOTGs. We were up in Rocky Mount by the firefighter facility. I'm walking across this one area, and I'm like, I'm a quarter mile away from the objective. I'm good. And just as I'm crossing this open field, I look to the right, and I see one of the SOTG guys. I'm like, son of a... I just keep on walking like, yep, you're always under observation.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But, also... For some of the stuff where the stalking was, you have to have something in between you and what you're observing to help break up. It's not necessarily, yes, kind of blending what's behind you, but you have to have something in front of you that's blocking the view from you.
The Afghans had a really, the Taliban dudes we'd fight, or the insurgents had a really good, they did that really well. They'd always put a terrain feature between, they'd shoot from like a tree line, but they'd have a second tree line that was in between, and they're shooting through like a window in that tree line, so that it'd be harder for us to find them. That's definitely key for engaging and stuff like that.
Because
go ahead.
Because we would sit there and they'd call it a toss salad. So if you're too close to your vegetation in front, you fired that blank, and the blast would come out, and the whole vegetation would shake. It's like, that's a toss salad. I see him. He's right there. So you have to be pulled back far enough away from that front vegetation to obscure that flash coming out, but not so so close that you're shaking the whole tree as you're shooting.
Yeah. You want to talk about some of the physically demanding portions of the course, because it's obviously it's not just a shooting and crawling around. There's a lot of physical demands, for that course. What was it like for you guys in the 90s going through it?
So back then you shot off a sandbag. So everywhere you went, you had to carry that 50 pound sandbag, plus your binos, plus your, they had a whole laundry list of a gear list that we had. So it ended up being like, 80 or 90 or 100 pounds that you had to carry everywhere. And you didn't walk anywhere at sniper school, you ran. So it was just constant, day in, day out. Hey, we're going to the armory. Throw your pack on, run to the armory, get your rifles, come back, run back, go to the chow. You'd run to the chow hall and then walk up the walkway to the thing. But everywhere you went, you were running. And I mentioned earlier how I hurt my left knee. I had to get medevac on the 91 cruise. That came back to bite me at sniper school. Apparently, I'd been overtasking my right leg, and I started having issues with my right knee. And it got to the point where they're like, hey, we want him to graduate. He's doing good. So they would give me a 5-minute head start to get to the next evolution.
Oh, really?
So it's me and my partner throw our stuff on as everybody else is like packing their, taking their time packing their stuff. Like, oh, hurry up, come on, Mo, we gotta go. And they give me a 5-minute head start to get to the next thing.
That's tough, man. Knee injuries are like shoulder injuries. You realize everything you do is affected by that injury. That's tough, especially in a physically demanding course like that. I remember going to the rifle range when I was at Camp Lejeune. You got to be at the fucking armory like whatever, 4 a.m. or whatever time it is, crazy early. And I remember driving in once or twice, I think it happened on 2 different occasions, and seeing the sniper school guys running by, covered in mud, completely head to toe, covered in mud, got their packs, got their rifles, and just running down the road. And I'm like, man, that sucks. I don't know what they're doing this morning, but I can't. It's hard for me to complain about my morning when those dudes they're already up and miserable before I even got out of bed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, though. Did you end up finishing the course? Did you graduate the course?
I did, yep. I graduated, I think it was like 4 June, 93. Went back to my sniper platoon, and I was like, yes, I'm a sergeant, I'm a sniper. And then like, yep, well, guess what? We have, so back then there was a thing called a stay platoon. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it was called, what the TO name of the platoon was, which stood for surveillance and target acquisition. So you had a radar section, which had ground surveillance radars, and you had a sniper section that had the scout snipers, and they ended up working in 2-man teams. Back then is how they ended up working. Nobody really operated that way because they got kind of getting rid of the radars. Mm-hmm. But our battalion ended up having radars. Like, hey, the senior billet is radar section. I'm like, oh, graduate sniper school, I'm the radar section leader.
Oh yeah.
We had ground surveillance radars, and by the time I left 2-8. They had gotten rid of those because there was no replacement parts for them. Mm-hmm. But so I was like excited to get back, and then like, no. And then the also downer was I checked it, get back to the battalion, and the career planner's like, hey, Sergeant Carr, where have you been? You need to fill out this recruiter checklist.
Oh, no way.
I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I just got done school. I'm ready to be in the platoon and and operate. And he's like, yeah, no, the Marine Corps says you need to fill this thing out. So I filled it out, and he's like, oh yeah. You need to figure out what class of these 3 you want. I was like, son of a.
So you got pulled to go do a B billet, man.
Well, I didn't. So I was really good friends with my recruiter, and I would go over to his house and have dinner with him and his wife. And I mentioned this, and I was like, man, I don't want to go. I want to stay. I want to stay in the battalion and do sniping and just operate in the field. And she's like, didn't you get bit by a tick? And I was like, well, yeah. Aren't you waiting for the Lyme disease test results? And I was like, you're right, I am. So I kept that kind of in the back of my mind. I go to the recruiter screening. I was the first guy in that morning. I'm in my chucks, and I'm all done up. And I go in there, and the major's looking at my stuff. He's like, oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, sniper, you can hang your stuff up. You'll get all kinds of kids in there. You're going to be great. What class do you want? He's like, you're still getting stuff out of his suitcase or his briefcase. He's like, do you know of anything that can keep you from going to recruit duty? And I was like, sir, I'm waiting for my Lyme disease test results. And he's like, Lyme? What? He got his little pad and paper. He's like, stamp, big med DQ on the top of my package.
What? Really? That's a thing?
Yeah. I got medically disqualified because what?
Just because you were getting tested? Sure. They not even knowing the results?
Well, I did. I thought I was waiting for the results. And he's like, well, for right now, I don't want to deal with you. He's like, here's your card. Yeah. If you get cleared, give me a call. I'll get you in the next class. And I was like, oh yes, sir. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great, sir. I ended up leaving.
That's probably one of the worst things that we do to guys that are, proficient in their field and doing well within their job. I mean, and people may disagree with me at headquarters Marine Corps, big Marine Corps people, whatever. But taking a guy that, like you, especially just coming out of school, and we've done it too. When I was a JTAC, we had guys come out of TCP school, and then right after that get histed and be like, hey, man, you're going recruiting. Sorry, bro. Yeah. And it's like you just spent who knows how much money to train this guy how to control aircraft and drop bombs. Yeah. And now you're before he even gets to deploy or use those skills, you're taking him and shipping him off somewhere, which guarantees not only will he not get to do it, but he's also going to lose his qualifications. And if he wants to redo that job, he's got to go back through the school again. It's like, It's so ridiculous. I almost got, in 2011, I got histed, 2010. And I think it was like 2010, I got the notification. And one of my buddies got the notification prior to me. before that, and he didn't go. His battalion sergeant major was like, don't worry about it. You don't need to go to the screening. I'll take care of it for you, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Fuck them. And if we found out that day, if you don't go to the screening, you're automatically deemed qualified and you're going to get orders even if you're not there. And so I was actually in the field because we were prepping for deployment, and I got pulled out of the field. I was in camis, showed up in camis, like it was raining. So I'm like soaked from rain. And they're like, who are you? I'm like, Kramer, I'm the 0861. And they're like, oh, go to the back. And at this period, this time frame, 2010, 2011, because of the need for JTACs and forward observers, they stopped taking 0861. So me telling them I was an 0861, there was like 3 of us that were there that day. They told all 3 of us to wait in the back. And then they did the whole brief, like, you're a careerist now. You have to get back to the Marine Corps. Welcome. You're going to be a recruiter or a drill instructor, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And then they're like, who are you guys in the back? Like, after they'd already screened everybody. And we're like, we're the 0861s. And they're like, you guys can leave. Like, we can't take you. We can't even touch you. And and a lot of guys tell me once they get histed, if they go through the process and they get declined for whatever reason, they get denied, they can't go, they continue to get histed like every year to see if they finally... I was never hit up ever again. I think they put like a permanent, like, can't do it on my record. So, yeah man, it's such a waste.
Histed years later, But I was at SOTG years later, and I had just gotten certified to instruct RNS, reconnaissance and surveillance, and went through the whole process. And they're like, yeah, we want this staff sergeant to come. And my master gun called out there is like, hey, no, we just got this guy certified. Send him to a bunch of different schools and get him, spun up to be, a certified, qualified instructor to teach, advanced urban reconnaissance, and you're not taking them. And I'm like, okay, roger that. And then,
so that's good, man. That's what guys in that position are supposed to do. But there's too many guys that don't do that. You know what I'm saying? There's too many guys that'll let a guy get fucked over, just to, I don't know, appease their own people, or because they don't want to stand. I don't know what it is, but a lot of guys get screwed over. Yeah. Also, a lot of guys screw themselves over by being assholes, and then it comes back to bite them because no one's going to help out an asshole. Yeah. So pro tip, don't be a dickhead and learn your job, and people will actually kind of help you out, usually. Yeah. So, I'd like to just, what kind of advice would you give? Let's say a kid is listening to this right now, and he read Marine Sniper. He was like, that's what made me join the Marine Corps over the Army. My dad was in the Army as well. I read Marine Sniper, and I was like, I'm joining the Marine Corps. I want to be a sniper. Da-da-da-da-da. What would you say to someone that was like me, that, like, I want to join the Marine Corps, and I want to be a Marine Sniper. What should I do to prepare? Or maybe I'm an infantryman, and I'm looking at it as an option. What should I do mentally and physically to prepare to jump into that kind of field?
And so it's weird. I've seen different battalions doing it different ways as for the indoc, and some of them, in my opinion, maybe it's because I'm skewed on how my indoc was evaluate the guy as an infantryman, not as a sniper. Some platoons like, okay, we're going to take out on stalk and say how you do it on stalk, and do other sniper skills instead of just evaluating them as an individual. But I would just say, grow where you're planted. Learn everything you can, stay in top physical shape, and focus on your 3 foot, your 3 foot wall or whatever, like your soul climber, like where can I reach and what can I affect? And don't worry about some of the bigger stuff that can't affect you. Don't let that stress you out and take you off your task. Yeah.
It's another one of those things you just kind of have to do it, and it probably, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is it one of those kind of schools where you don't really know who's going to graduate? Like, you send a bunch of guys and you're like, well, so-and-so is really good, but he didn't make it through the course for this reason or that reason. Like, and as an example, I'm saying this because I knew guys that went to TCP school that went to go to become JTACs. And I'm like, this dude's a great forward observer. He's he's very proficient at being an 0861, but there was just something he couldn't get at school. Like there was a thing that he just couldn't get over, and he would fail it. And it's like, so you can't really judge who's going to pass or not. Is it similar with that?
I would say so, because there's some stuff. I mean, like for me, it wasn't until my 4th or 5th stalk that the light bulb clicked on. Oh, this is what they're looking for, And until then, I was totally butchering it, getting busted. either moving or getting in position, or once in position, the position it wasn't right because the position wasn't clicking.
Yeah.
And once the light bulb clicked on, I was like, oh, this is what they're looking for. Now I know what to look for, as I'm moving in to get to that position.
Yeah.
So I think some of it is the skill of understanding that. And some people learn it quicker than others. Same thing with the shooting. They're doing a lot different stuff, shooting from different positions, shooting from the kneeling, on tripods, and a variety of different stuff. I've heard that they're going to doing some of the stuff as an individual, whereas like when I did all my stuff, it was as a partner. So if my partner was good at calling wind, I was good to go. You know what I'm saying? But if he was bad at calling wind, I could be the best shot, but I'm trying to rely on him. Now I'm trying to do his job and my job and recorrect as I'm putting stuff on there.
Yeah.
So I was talking to one of my buddies that's still an active duty gunner, and he was saying that they've gone and changed it where the individual shoots some himself. So now you can evaluate, can he shoot, but can he also call the wind
for himself?
Because you might be out there in a fight and you might not have your partner that's right there able to call the wind in the static 2-man position.
Over the last 20 years, during this global war on terrorism, 18 years, I guess, if you want to be fair about it, the last 18 years, how often have you seen snipers being employed, and how often have they been employed in the traditional sense where you have like a sniper and a spotter rather than a dude that just gets attached to like a platoon or something going out?
So I think so you go to school and do a 2-man team, but in the platoons I was in, the nucleus was the 2-man team, but you went out as a 4-man team. We always went out as a 4-man team. Except for on one of the MUs where the MU commander's like, I want to reduce the footprints. I'm only sending 3 ashore. But that was a conscious decision on his part. But generally, we try to do 4-man teams. The only time I've seen 2-man team going out would be attached to a platoon or attached to like a raid force going out or something. Attached to another element that would provide them their security.
Yeah. Okay.
But never really as like a Carlos half-cocked 2-man team going out to do some kind of shooting like that.
Yeah.
And like over in Iraq, there was like a 6 or 8 man minimum that so a sniper team had to go out. They had to take because of other stuff.
Didn't that come into play, that minimum, after that team got killed? That sniper team was killed because of I think the security fell asleep or something like that, and they all ended up being killed. Yeah, man, that was a tough one. I remember hearing about that too. That's like, for a community like your guys, is just like the 0861 or the JTAC community. It's a small group of people. There's not. If I don't know you, I can reach out to someone that knows you. You know what I'm saying? It's such a small group of people. And for something like that to happen into that community, I know it probably rippled, through there's probably private sniper Facebook groups and all this stuff that were like, what happened? I can imagine, how devastating that would have been for those guys. Did you see any other kind of TTPs or anything come from that incident? Or were you still on active duty when that happened? I'm not sure. Sorry.
Yeah, I was, but I was at that point. I was a gunny, and I was wasn't operating in a sniper position, if you will.
Okay.
I was. So I want to say it was a little bit before that. I was at 2-6 at that point when that stuff happened. I was the company gunny for Fox Company, and we were doing the AT battalion before we went to Iraq in Fallujah in 05. We did in like 04 time frame. We did the might have been late 03 and 04. We ended up doing the anti-terrorist battalion stuff. So we sent my company sent 90 guys to Afghanistan. Echo Company sent, so Fox was in Afghanistan. Echo Company sent a large portion to do Carr's eye security, and then for the elections. And then Gulf Company went to guard the embassy in Iraq. So while all our planning was going on there, my battalion commander would like come into my company office, stick his head in the company commander's office, like, hey Skipper, I'm taking your gunny. Come on, Gunny Carr, let's go. And I'd go to a med meeting, that would have talk about snipers or DMs or something like that. And they would sit there and talk, and I'd be in the back of the room, and he's like, is that right? Hey, Gunny, is that right? And I'd stand up. Yes, sir. I sit back down. They're like, who the fuck is that dude?
He's just a dude. He's just a dude in the back. That's funny. But
at that point, I was not. I was already a company gun at 2-seater at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to ask about sniper school before or being a sniper. Well, okay, here's a question. In your time frame, who were the legends in your community? Who were the guys at the up and coming snipers, the guys that haven't gone to sniper school? Who are the names that are whispered amongst those guys? Like the legends within your community.
Neil Morris was one. Trying to think of. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but we were stovepiped, So, I mean, and what I mean by that was we didn't do a lot of cross-training between the battalions. You might know a guy from another platoon only because you went to sniper school with him.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have a whole lot of interaction. Like, hey, let's go out. We're doing this range. Does anybody else want to come do this range with us?
Yeah.
Hey, you provide the corpsman. We'll provide this or whatever. It was a lot of just in your platoon. Your stuff like that.
Yeah. At what point during your career did you just?
I got a name for you. Sergeant Major Zikafus was definitely one. I think he's getting ready to retire now. He was one of the instructors when I went to advanced sniper school a few years later when I was in 3-6. He had Silver Star recipient from the Gulf War.
Oh, wow.
Schwacked a bunch of dudes there. Schwacked a bunch of dudes in Mogadishu, in Somalia, and some other stuff, and then.
Okay. Was he the dude that wrote that book? Isn't there a book called? I'm not even going to bring it up.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's written a book. But he's the only person that I know of that checked into a battalion as a staff sergeant and left as a sergeant major.
Oh, no way.
He checked into 2-6 as a gunny select staff sergeant. Picked up gunny on the 99 float as a sniper platoon sergeant. Next deployment was Echo Company gunny. The war kicks off. He's now frocked first sergeant in the same company, and then does another deployment, goes to Afghanistan with them, guarding the Karzai, and then goes to us with 2-6 into Fallujah in 05. And then while there, got selected for sergeant major.
Wow, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. So guys like that, I mean, when you see at what point. At some point you got to hang up, your sniper rifle, right? You're not going to be the guy out on the mission. You become like the planner and the staff guy. At what point does that kind of happen? And then how do you look at, or do you look at guys like that sergeant major for like guidance on like, hey man, I'm transitioning to more of like a planning thing. I'm moving away from the tactical stuff to like a office environment, more so planning and stuff like that. Who's your mentor for something like that, moving out of the field into the office kind of lifestyle?
So in 2-8, so I did all the 2s in 2nd Marine Division. So I did 2-8, 2-2, and 2-6.
Nice.
So when I was in 2-8, Staff Sergeant Eby was in Iraq with me in 91, was my platoon sergeant in the sniper platoon in 92. And then he went to Fast Company, and then shortly after that whole recruiting duty thing, pulled me up to Fast Company. And while I was up there, part of my time there, he was my platoon sergeant up there. And then years later, I was at AITC, Advanced Infantry Training Company, and he was there as well. So we kind of kept in touch the whole time. And then he became a gunner, and then kind of helped mentor me when I became a gunner as well.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. To bring it back real quick, you're the first guy I've had on that did work with Fast. Do you want to explain what FAST is, kind of what their mission is, and then maybe what some of the work that you did with them?
So Fast Company is Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team Company. Back then, there was only one company, and that was based out of Norfolk. We had 6 platoons. 2 platoons were on alert at all times. One on like Alpha, and one on Bravo. One like, you're the one that's going to go. And they would do it for like 4 months, and they had to flip-flop. So for this month, 2nd platoon would be on the primary alert. And then the next month, like for when I was there, I was in 2nd. Us and the 6th platoon always worked together. So on the kind of this, not together, but on the same cycle.
Yeah.
And so we would be the primary, then they'd be the primary. We do that for 4 months. And we were set to do, really any taskings from the Chief of Naval Operations down to any kind of crisis that was going on. When I was there, I got sent up there. Initially, they're like, "Oh, we want you to come to the training section to help out with the snipers and teach the DMs and stuff." I was like, "Great." I got up there, and the company commander was like, "Well, first I check in and I'm at my alphas, and everybody's like, 'Hey, Sergeant Carr.' I'm like, how does everybody know my name? I'm just checking in, and I come to find out I was in the Globe. We were the first battalion to have Sassers when I was at 2-8, and they took a picture of me behind the Sasser, which is the 50 cal sniper rifle.
Oh, you were okay. Sorry,
yeah,
you
so
broke up a little bit. You said you were the first platoon that had sassers.
Yeah, which is the special application scope rifle, or the Barrett 50 cal.
Okay.
So we were the first ones to have that. I was in the picture. My picture behind that was in the Globe. And then when I went in later on that day, the company commander had that on his board behind him. Like, this is one of my guys, one of the incoming guys coming in. So he's like, I want you to know what you're supporting. So I'm going to send you to second platoon, and they're the next platoon going to Mogadishu. I was like, shit, awesome. That works for me.
Yeah, yeah. What was that like? I mean, did you go to Mogadishu? Did you?
We did, yeah. So we went to Mogadishu. We did a whole huge workup to get ready to go. And it was like a
what year was this?
94.
Okay.
So this was after Black Hawk Down and all that stuff had gone on. And so our workup was, we would shoot in the morning or the afternoon, but we shot pretty much every day, mainly pistol. And then some rifles. The pistol was the harder one to get your quals up for than the rifle. And then we'd also do like tactics. We'd start out with, 2-man room entries, 2-man online, 2-man, 2-man online, 4-man online, and then we went to long wall, which is one of the guys goes long. We did that. So we did like a stepping stone thing. Like, okay, we went through until the whole squad went through like half the day without messing up their sectors with an empty room. And then we built, okay, we're going to put a piece of furniture in. And we go through and do it with a piece of furniture in. And we worked our way to a room full of furniture. Then they backed out, and then they put one occupant in. And we go in there, same thing, clear with the one occupant that was compliant. And we worked our way all the way eventually to a room full of furniture with 1 or 2 compliant occupants and then 1 non-compliant occupant as we're going through. So that was part of our workup. We also did convoy stuff, heavy machine guns. The platoon I was in, we were broken up into, we had 3 squads. So first and second squads were like set up like a rifle squad, and then the third squad was the weapons guys. But back then, when I first got to the platoon, we were on a standing JTF, Joint Task Force. A force recon platoon was the shooters. A force recon platoon was the RNS, and then we were the covering force. So when you got to our platoon, that platoon specifically, no matter what your MOS was, you were an outside guy, as they called it. You were in third platoon. You start there, you understand the whole process of what you're doing, and then you work your way up. Everybody did all the ranges, everybody did all the shooting, but then you worked your way into the second squad, which is the backup shooters, and then you became a primary shooter. And if you're in the primary shooter squad, say, they might go in and be the trailers for the force, and then at one point they just fill and flow together because it was all kind of this, the same stuff. They start running out of shooters, whatever, they just fill and flow in with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think that's one of the things that people see, like the CQB stuff, the close quarter battle stuff, that entices people to join the military. Like you see the videos of guys doing the training, or even in real life, you're like, man, that looks cool, but it's very nerve-wracking. Like you want to explain kind of the mentality of going through and clearing a house, that you kind of have to have. And did you guys ever do any shoot houses? Obviously, I'm assuming you shot live ammo.
Well, yeah. So,
did you ever do occupants with live ammo too, though?
Not occupants with Sims.
Okay.
But not but so our sector, as we learned it, was the muzzle of the other shooter. So if you had your rifle up, it was only 2 or 3 feet in front of where that other shooter was. And you come through, collapse your sector. As you come, you're stopping at the muzzle. So in case I come in and hit a doorway, and I'm expecting you to swing all the way and cover all this stuff, you might hit an open door and stop, and I swing all the way. I have to swing all the way to you to cover, and make sure I cover the rest of the room or whatever.
Yeah.
But we were sitting there doing stuff with the first time in there, I was like, oh, this is real. This is some big boy stuff, because I got rounds flashing right in front of me because I'm holding on this, and there's a target right over here, right next to me.
Yeah. I bet you guys walk away from that though, like with a trust in each other that it's hard to replicate.
Oh, definitely. And I've talked to some of my other buddies, and I was like, at first that was terrifying, but after doing it a while, that became the norm. And I think that's what we try to do, is get that to be the norm. So when somebody's shooting back, now that's the stressor, and not being in a house or in a room with somebody else shooting, across the room from you. Yeah. And so you kind of build that up slowly and surely until, and that's why, like, how these guys how can they jump out of a plane, into this and do this and this and this and this with any one of those things would, terrify somebody. they've done it so much that becomes the norm. That doesn't even spike their adrenaline anymore.
Yeah, you realize you're like, oh, there's so many safeties here. Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is weird how you discount. And I tell guys that all the time, especially guys that say they didn't really do anything while they were in the military. I'm like, you're discounting your own service because what you did seemed normal around everyone you were around, when in reality it's not normal. Like going and doing some of the training you do in the Marine Corps is just not a normal thing. And even though to you it seems maybe you didn't get to go do jumping out of planes or doing something, so that looks high speed, and what you're doing is like, oh man, this is what losers do, you know. But people on the outside are looking at you like, dude, the shit you're doing is crazy too, you know. Yeah, it is weird like that, man. We're coming up on 2 hours, and I'm totally cool with going across that. But I feel like I'll probably have to have you come back on and do another show. Okay. But on this first episode, I would like you to get into why you became a gunner and kind of, I don't know if you kind of want to give some information out there to people that are unfamiliar with what a Marine gunner is. Because I've heard people say that any warrant officer is a gunner and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's not it, man. I'm like, they'd be highly offended if you say that to them.
Yeah. The gunners came or were around since Gunner Holbert was like in, I don't remember, like World War I or earlier, was the first gunner.
Okay.
And when I say gunner, I mean bursting bomb gunner, like if you can see that.
Yeah.
Bursting bomb like that. And I guess years ago, it used to be different jobs. In Vietnam, it was like some ordnance, some other stuff. When General Gray brought him back in '89, General Gray was the commandant, and he brought Marine gunners back, and it was specifically to be a infantry weapon. So the Marine gunner is the term and a title, but the actual MOS name is Infantry Weapons Officer. So warrant officers are specialists in something. Our specialty is all the weapons in the infantry. Mm-hmm. So they came back in '89 and slowly built up. And apparently we had one when I was in 2.8. I never knew it.
Exactly. See?
Yeah. But I think things have changed years later. When I was in 3.6, we had one. Somebody asked the guy about, a machine gun. He's like, "Whoa, devil dog! I'm a third echelon employer. I don't mess around with the gun." I think we've gone past that as well. Mm-hmm. Where these guys are down in the dirty with, the Lance Corporals teaching them stuff if need be on the range, as well as up talking to the colonels and the company commanders and beyond. Mm-hmm. Like on the one MU, I ended up having to go with the MU OPSO because the MU doesn't have a gunner. So you're the de facto MU gunners, when you're the BLT gunner.
Yeah.
And ended up having to go to talk with the Jordanians, or no, the Qatarian, whatever, military, because they wanted to fire a Malign missile like a couple hundred meters off of where the stands were going to be. Like, it is okay, my friend, it is okay. You'll be, no,
bro.
Sir. I was like, and I pulled out the SDZ, and I had to do like a BlackBerry, to send an all text message to all the gunners, like, hey, I need help. Mm-hmm. I need a Malign missile system, SDZ. And, and Carlos Hathcock's son, Carlos Hathcock, was up at TRADOC, which is the Inter-Service Resident Range Safety Officer program that certifies gunners and others to set up ranges overseas or whatever we're certified in. Mm-hmm. And he sent me something back. And long story short is me and the OPSO went to the MU commander and the embassy. They're like, hey, you don't want to be up there because if this thing goes erratic, it could come up here and take you out.
Yeah.
And it got to that, to that level. So from up there down to talking with, the young Marines on the firing line, like, hey, why are you doing this? Well, try this or whatever. This is why you're doing it like that, not another way or whatever. Like, oh, shoot, okay, sir, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know B and guys in my peer group were always down talking to the young Marines as well as interacting with officers or staff and SEALs at higher levels that are, setting the training up and all that.
That's really the way to be, man. And one of my last, I remember sitting on I think it was the last time I went to the field on my last OP, and I went down and I sat down with all the junior observers. They were all doing their terrain sketches and doing shit. Yeah. And I'm like, look, guys, I knew some of them, and some of them I never met. And I'm just like, hey guys, I'm out of here, man. Like, this is my last field op. Like, what kind of questions you got? What do you want to know? Like, pull any information out of me that you need. And, It's good that you're going down and doing that. I think more senior people need to come down and be like, hey guys, you always complain that, you don't understand this, you don't understand that. Here, I'm here to teach you. I'm here to show you, like, man to man. It's not Staff Sergeant Kramer and Lance Corporal so-and-so. I'm down here to train and do the work and pass on that knowledge. And I think that's really cool. And I think that the Marine gunner is just, it's just, one, it sounds cool. Two, your whole job is just working with weapons all day, doing stuff with weapons, ranges, explosives and stuff like that. So I think that's like obviously a very valuable tool to have in the Marine Corps' toolbox. And to, like you were saying, coming down and just explaining information to people does so much just to make people more aware of why they're doing something. It makes them want to do it, even more so. And I don't understand why people don't get that. But
so for me, one of your questions you asked was, why did I become one?
Yeah,
I didn't know what the heck one was until I was in 2-6.
Oh, really?
And I was there, and we had a guy named Tommy Beecher came in, and he was awesome. And I was like, because before that we had one great guy. I think he was just burned out of being in the battalion. We were in Okinawa. We weren't doing anything anyway, so there wasn't a whole lot of training going on. So we didn't really have any interaction with him. But once we started getting ready for our company-specific Afghanistan and the ATF or the AT battalion stuff, I started seeing what he was doing, and I was like, oh, this is what they do. Mm-hmm. I want to do that. And that was what really was the catalyst for me to say, hey, I want to become a gunner. I knew, like I said, Jeff Eby was one, but I really didn't know what the heck they did until interacting with him as a company gunny and seeing what exactly they do, and like, oh wow, man, you can have an impact across the board. And then while half of my company was in Afghanistan, I ended up becoming the de facto company first sergeant. And I don't know, I'd rather
really
deal with the 90% than the 10%.
Yeah, of course.
Because I had all the files I needed. I had a file that had the BCP. I had highlighted. Okay, change this and this. Format page 11 already. I had all the stuff done. It was a no-brainer. All you did this, send. And then it got to the point where the sergeant major was like, he was going away, and one of the new first sergeants was like, "Sergeant major, what happens if I have an NJP coming up and you're not here?" He's like, "Oh, go see Gunny Carr, because he's been doing it. He's done probably already 25 of them since Fox Company left." Mm-hmm. He's like, "All right," and then he messed it up because he didn't come see me.
Yeah.
Because he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to go down to a gunny and see it." But the guy ended up getting his charges thrown out because he did something wrong. But I say all that to say that I was doing that, and I was like, yeah, I could do it, but I'd rather be out there with the young Marines with the weapons and doing all
100%,
training them with all the knowledge I've done. Having gone from a bunch of different infantry battalions, doing sniping, fast company, SOTG, SOI, teaching advanced machine guns, teaching squad leader school, some other stuff. And
what was the requirements for you to become a gunner, and what was the school like?
So when I became a gunner, there was only like 50 or 60 gunners in the Marine Corps. Now we've enveloped the range officer. MOS went away, and we took all those billets. So it's up to it went up to 106. Now it's down to 90 some. But you had to be an 0369 infantry unit leader, gunny with 16 years in the Marine Corps to put in for it.
Okay, I didn't know you had to have 16 years in.
Yeah, so part of it is because you were going back then. I think it's down to 14 or less now. That was the average. Back then, the average time in service, or when a guy became a gunny, was 15 years. They wanted you to have another year as a gunny, so you had that experience because you're working for the battalion commander.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have Sergeant so-and-so going up there can't articulate what he needs to articulate with the colonel or somebody else. Mm-hmm. And it was also just the experience of being a company gunny, being all these these different jobs and billets.
Yeah.
So you had that depth and breadth of experience to do
that. So where's the school? How long is it? And what kind of stuff did you cover?
So when you back, of course, my class, I'm always the class. My class was the last class where you got promoted to the fleet and then showed up at already in your rank. So everybody else. So let me back up. So when I put my package in to become a gunner, you got specifically looked at by a different board to become a Marine gunner. There's a sitting regimental commander, and then there's 6 of them, and then the other 5 are lieutenant colonels that are battalion commanders or former battalion commanders that have worked with gunners, and they sit on the board and look at your packages. So that's one board. A completely separate board is the recruiting officer or warrant officer board. The same thing. You have to be 84, whatever their career recruiter guy is, to do that. The rest, and both of our job, you became a CWO2 right off the bat.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else puts in, I want to be, an admin, air traffic controller, or what, they get a choice of 3, and that's a different complete board. They go through, but we all go to the Warrant Officer Basic Course up at TBS. That's a 3-month-long school, become a provisional rifle platoon commander is what the goal is at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, so our class, there was a bunch of people that were overweight, failed, and whatever else. So now you're an officer. There's nothing else that the staff up there can do than discharge you if you mess up as an officer.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So, I mean, you go up there, you fail your PFT, you're overweight or whatever else. You're an officer now. Now you might have had 15, 16 years in, you're getting discharged.
How could you be going to a school like that and fail a PFT? Like, come on.
Well, that's because people aren't holding them to the standard.
Mm.
And that's what Colonel Mortensen was. He was the CO of TBS. He was a great guy. He was 2/8 Battalion Commander a few years back. But he was like, I can't count on my brethren of colonels to do the right thing as he saw it, to make sure that a guy is heighted and weighted and can pass a PFT.
Yeah, they're not pin whipping all their stuff for them.
Yeah. Well, so what he did was, okay, from then on, you showed up at TBS at whatever rank you were. Usually in February is when the Warrant Officer Basic Course goes.
Mm-hmm.
So they started having people showing up in late January at whatever rank you were. You show up, you get heighted, you get weighted, you PFT, you do some other stuff, and if you fail, you're still Staff Sergeant Carr. You can go back to the fleet as Staff Sergeant. You still have a career. You're not getting screwed by the Marine Corps or because nobody else held you to the standard. So I mean, I think in the end it was a good call because it saved a lot of people that got kicked out, and got disgruntled because he was a good enlisted guy. He just wasn't held to the standard or whatever.
Yeah, that's crazy. So after the basic course, though, you go to a school specifically for the Marine Gunner, correct?
So you do now.
Okay.
It's called the Infantry Weapons Officer course, and they have it's its own POI. It has its own standards that you have to pass. Ours was kind of like we went to the rifle range and we learned became combat marksmanship trainers. We did again. So I went through it twice. I went through the not twice here, but I did once as an enlisted guy, the Inter-Service Resident Range Safety Officer course, getting certified to draw SDZs, and all that. And then we went through that again as a gunner. I had to pass that, and then we went through infantry officers course, portions of it.
Okay.
So we went through like the individual weapons and other stuff, and even from the get-go, it was like separated. We were separated from in the sense of like we're going to the range tomorrow. Students, you're wearing green digitals. Gunners and instructors, you're wearing desert digitals. So they would separate us apart. We got on the guns and fired the guns and all that stuff, and we did everything that they did until they broke off and did like fire movement. They're like, you guys are too old. We don't need you to go through and do that. That was my class, but initial classes had to go through the whole infantry officers course, POI,
really?
As a student. Yeah.
Geez, that's tough, especially for an older dude.
Yeah. So what I think changed the tide was, I can't remember who it was. One of the gunners had previously gone through and graduated the honor man from IOC as a staff sergeant.
Oh, really? That's cool.
And so he goes in there. He's like, hey man, do I really need to go through this? And they're like, yes, gunner, you have to go through it. Just because you're gunner doesn't mean you're special. He's like, no. He pointed over the board like, that's me. I was honor grad as staff sergeant so-and-so, coming through the course straight through. And then the light bulb kind of clicked on, I think, to them, like, well, do we really need to have them go through, learn rushes and other stuff? And then so like it evolved to our class where we didn't have to go through all the other stuff. We broke off, did some specialized SDZ stuff. We went to National Ground Intelligence Agency and learned some stuff about foreign weapons there and some other things. We also with a couple different places, and we met back up with them for when they went out to 29 Palms. Out of 29 Palms, our final exercise was we built ranges out there, and they're actually still in like binders out there. So we did the SDZs. We went out and did the range recons, plugged in the grids and all that, drew up the SDZs, and then we briefed the range control staff as if they were the battalion commander and wanting to do a range.
Yeah.
So that was like final exercise.
Nice. Yeah, gunners are cool, man. They're hit and miss. Some of them they remind me of Naval Academy graduates, right? They're all smart, But some of them are like smart, common sense, working to get the job done. And some of them are just book smart and don't have any common sense. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, as an example, and maybe he's a good guy, I don't know, but the gunner I had with 3.6 when I was deployed to Afghanistan, this dude went around and pulled mortars from positions and didn't even tell me. And I was the fires chief. Like, I didn't even know I didn't have mortars, and no one radioed back to like, hey, we've moved the mortars from this position, da-da-da-da. And like, I'm like, dude, you can't. And people are upset at me, like, why are you getting mad at Gunner for? I'm like, well, maybe because he moved my fucking mortars without even mentioning it to the fires chief. You know, I guess that's what I'm here for. You know, so guys like that. But and then another example, I had an awesome gunner when I was on the 11th MEU with the Anglo detachment. We went out to do a range in Saudi Arabia, and the battalion commander, the BLT commander, was like, no, get those attack helicopters farther back. They're too close to the, you know, we had LAVs that were doing a rush, you know, and then they were going to dismount and then push forward. And when they were pulling up to their vehicles and they were going to stop, we were going to have rockets and guns and simulated hellfires come in from Cobras and Hueys. And he didn't like how close we were shooting in front of his, you know, the FLOT, the forward line of troops. And we're like, Gunner, dude, like, come on, man, you know, like, can you help us out here? And, you know, he obviously had to go back, get on his gunner computer and pull up all the stuff. And then came back and told the battalion commander, like, hey, they're actually being more safe than I would have told them to be. Like, they could have brought it in even closer if we wanted. And I'm like, thanks, that's what's up, you know? And that's when you're like, thank you, Gunner, for coming here and like bringing some common sense to the situation. Like, let us train, you know? Let's all assume we're all professionals here until we prove otherwise, kind of deal. But
and I think some of the gunner community now is even better because they were in combat as young sergeants, corporals, you know, staff sergeants, and everything else. Before becoming a gunner, Vice's me, who did a lot of peacetime stuff that was little hits here and there, but not like heavy combat like guys have seen now. So they bring that experience and know, like, okay, no, this is a no kidding. This is what we need to do. And,
you know, I think one of the coolest things I saw the last few years and kind of brought people's attention to the gunner MOS was a couple years ago, maybe about 3 years ago now, when that 2nd Marine Division gunner was making all the videos, right? Those were cool. I like them. Like he was cooking bacon on the suppressor, like stuff like that. I was like, dude, it's crazy because now it seems like the military is kind of embracing that, hey, social media, making this content and putting it out there, these small, short videos. And that's what he was doing. And he was making the entire force and like general people that would find his videos more intelligent on the subject of why we're using this rifle or what the capabilities of this weapon system are. So you laugh, but you obviously know the situation.
He was in my gunner class.
Oh, really?
He was the #1 graduate. He was the #1 graduate at TBS.
Yeah.
Of the 210 guys, he was the #1 graduate.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's awesome dude. Awesome.
Is he still in?
No, he's retired.
He's retired as well. I thought that was I thought when I saw those videos, I'm like, you know what? Like some of them are kind of goofy or whatever, but like the point, he's getting the point across. Like I'm teaching you a quick lesson. You know, I think none of the videos are more than like maybe not even 5 minutes long, you know, and I think more guys should do. I was thinking about it today before I had even thought of this, but I was thinking about earlier today, how like recruiters should recruiters. I don't know why the recruiting community doesn't have people like, I don't know, something like this, like a podcast kind of deal where they can have like a 15-minute YouTube clip of some guy like me explaining what it was like for me as an 0861 or as a, you know, or being a JTAC and directing their potential recruits, because recruiters only know what they know. You know what I'm saying? Like if you were an admin guy at IPAC, what do you know about the combat arms community? Like, no offense, but you can't explain what it's like to go to the field all the time and stuff like that to a kid that might be recruiting. And videos like what he was making, explaining, you know, his field, like that's real world information. That's like realist. And he passed it in a way where people could understand it and be entertained by it too, you know, which is the key. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I thought that was super cool. And I thought that kind of brought people's attention to like, what's a gunner? You know, people were like, wait, he's a what? He's a 2nd Marine Division gunner? Like, what is that?
We used to tell everybody we were the cook because we had a pineapple. Everybody see the bursting bomb on their collar, and they're like, what is that thing? What's that pineapple thing? Oh, that's the pineapple. It means I'm the colonel's cook. They're like, okay, roger that. Yeah.
What kind of individual would you recommend, you know, consider becoming a gunner? Like, what does it take, do you think, to you know, take on that responsibility of that position?
You need a variety of MOS experience, meaning, machine gun, mortars, across the O3 MOSs. You need to be a self-starter because you're on 9 times out of 10. I was on my own doing whatever I needed to get done.
Mm-hmm.
One of my battalion commanders was telling somebody, he's like, he is the most traveled guy in the battalion.
Dude, for sure.
He comes to this range, make sure it's going good. Do they got the ammo? They got, is everything set up? Is the training going correctly? Is there any, training that needs to get adjusted? Nope, it's going good. Hey, here's my number. I'm out. And then go to the next range, especially like when we're out at a DFT, like up at Pickett or AP Hill or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
just always on the road.
I remember our gunner never being on ship when we were on the MEU.
Yeah.
He was always forward, setting up the range,
Yeah.
like you're saying,
Yeah.
or making, doing certifying stuff or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not like, people joke about the warrant officers, like, oh, go become a warrant officer and you can skate, better. It's like all the skater lance corporals go become warrant officers. They can, they can just skate and do whatever. And I'm like, that's probably true, like, except for the gunner field where they're constantly out there doing
definitely
shit.
not this one. Yeah, because of my 4 MEUs, that was the last one when I was the gunner, and I did. I want to say I did like 42 days on ship out of our 6 months.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't beat that, man. The less time you can do on ship, the better, especially if as an enlisted guy.
And then I was also able to continue once I got on ship. I kept on getting back on ship within every 30 days, so I had CPA the whole time. So that worked out well.
Oh wow, yeah. There you go, man. So for the whole gunner MOS, you stay so like you said, you come to the fleet as a chief warrant officer 2, gunner.
Yep.
And what is it goes up to chief warrant officer 5. What is the different like ranks and different roles you can have at those different ranks?
So as a 2 and or 3, you can be down at a battalion and either have like an infantry battalion or LAR. Recon has a battalion gunner. They had the billet and was hit or miss whether it was filled or not. Mm-hmm. SOI has gunners. Those are usually, they try to have a 2 or really a 3 at ITB and MCT, and then there's a 4 at the schoolhouse at the regimental level, if you will.
Yeah.
So he's like a regimental gunner. And then you can also, so you can be at SOIs. You can go to since we took over the range officer. Mm-hmm. You can be at a rifle range as well. So some guys were graduating school, and instead of going to an infantry battalion, they were going straight to like, Incheon range at Parris Island. And, so the range officer, way they were doing it was you graduated school, warrant officer basic course and whatever other school they went to. And then you went to run one range. So they had like 4 or 5 warrant officers, WO1s, on the range, and then they had another layer on top of them supervising them. That was like either a 3 or a 4, and then another higher one at weapons training battalion. That was like a 4. So they had a bunch. They had like 6 MOS guys down there, and when we took that over, like that is way too many.
Yeah.
So the Marine Corps looked at like, okay, where do we want to send them? And that's where we started. Now we have guys at Combat Engineer Battalion, AAVs maybe. I kind of lost the bubble on but they're pulling them from there. Like, we don't need to have 6 guys down there. We can have maybe 2 down here. One does the rifle range, one does the field training battalion stuff, and they can cover it all. You don't need to have, you basically were the OIC of a range that's static. We're like, this guy's just got done doing all this, fire maneuver and all this other stuff. Now you're down to this. But to the other ones, that's what kind of what they needed. That was their introduction to being a platoon commander. She might have had a sergeant that was, he got waved down to sergeant. He never led a platoon or anything like that. So that was his platoon commander time and learning that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we also have people up at TBS. There's a CW4 at actually TBS. There is a CW3, that's the infantry officers course gunner. There's also like PP&O has plans, preparation and operations or something. It's like the S3 for the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
There's a CW5. He's our senior gunner is there. There's also at Systems Command maybe, or there's a couple other ones that are in the National Capital Region that are either 4s or 5s that are up there that are like, feeling the new gear for the Marine Corps.
Yeah, like Marcor Syscom.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Marcor Syscom is exactly where we have one of our CW5s there now. So we adjusted some things and came up with that. So we're across the force now. The Marine Corps wants more, but when you say, hey, I want to have a gunner here, you have to give up structure in your command. Okay, am I going to get rid of this captain or lieutenant or whatever, to put a gunner in that spot? We're not gaining another body in the Marine Corps. We're just taking one from one spot to another.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, man, like I said, we're just at over 2 hours now, so I think we'll cut it here. Is there any kind of, is there any organizations you wanna throw out there, or you wanna put out your own social media, anything like that? Like, this is your opportunity to promote any of that stuff.
Yeah, I would say the Semper Fi Fund. When I was going through the TBI clinic, they purchased a alpha wave stimulation machine for me, which helps me. You hook up little electrodes to your ear and puts a mild shock back and forth. It's supposed to retrain your brain from being on hyper alert all the time to what normal is again.
That's wild. I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. So I have that. There's other machines that they have, but because I was getting bouts of vertigo with flashing lights and stuff, they didn't want to give it. There's like an AVI machine or something. It's headphones on and glasses, so it's like noise and light flashing with your eyes closed. That is supposed to help calm your brain and reset it.
Like retraining yourself.
Yeah, but my brain with the vertigo stuff, they're like, we don't want to try that. But long story short is the Semper Fi Fund paid for that, $1,500 device for me to get.
That's awesome, man. I've only heard good things about the Semper Fi Fund. I've had multiple people come on the show and talk about how the Semper Fi Fund has done great things for them. And I continue to tell people, like, if you're looking for a charity to donate to, I think Semper Fi Fund is definitely. I should have somebody from the Semper Fi Fund come on here sometime, but that's definitely one I think people should look at. I've never personally used them for anything or anything like that. I just, from everybody I've talked to that have gone through Wounded Warrior Battalion and stuff like that, it's always Semper Fi Fund always seems to come up in the conversation because they sponsored or supported some event or something like your case where they bought a piece of equipment that you require to become better, a better person or whatever. So that's really cool. Did you want to put out any of your social media or anything like that?
I guess on Instagram, I think it's Blaster8541.
Okay. That way, if anybody has any questions about the gunner world, they can reach out to you. Yeah. Well, man, I'll probably have you come on at some other point and talk some more stories. It was very, entertaining conversation and educational too, because, I said, the gunner field is kind of, it's behind a little shroud of secrecy. Not a lot of people really know about them unless you've worked with them directly and stuff like that. They're kind of that dude that's off doing something that you've heard about, but you don't know exactly what it is. So, but yeah, thanks again for coming on. And man, just for everybody out there, make sure to hit up my Instagram. It's J Kramer Graphics, and at Former Action Guys on Instagram, and my website's jkramergraphics.com. And I'll probably edit this up and put it out tomorrow or the next day.
Awesome, man. Hey, thanks again, Justin, for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Bye.